Lanterns flickered in the damp courtyard as the night wind whispered through the gnarled branches of the old willow tree. In the small village of Ashford Hollow, the villagers had gathered under the open eaves of the Grey family estate, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns that hung in clusters from wooden beams. Tonight was a night of stories, and the air thrummed with anticipation. The storyteller, a tall man named Ulrich Thornwood, draped in a cloak of deep forest green, stepped forward, his voice low and resonant. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ulrich began, glancing toward the expectant crowd, "thank you for joining me on this damp, moonlit eve. I promise you a tale of sorrow, vengeance, and restless spirits, the kind of story that will chill your bones. Gather close, for I bring you the legend of the retribution of Ashford Hollow." A hush fell as Ulrich's gaze drifted to the looming silhouette of the Grey Manor behind him. The villagers exchanged uneasy glances. It was said that those walls had witnessed horrors that no one dared repeat aloud. Yet on nights like this, when the harvest moon shone full and rumors of strange lights in the woods circulated, anyone with a brave heart or a foolish one would come to listen. Ulrich's lips curved into a knowing smile as he began his tale. Once upon a time, not so many years ago, there lived a young man named Lucian Grey. Lucian was the only son of Helena Grey, the widowed lady of Ashford Hollow. The Grey family name was once respected far and wide, their lands vast, their coffers plentiful. But Lucian, from his earliest days, possessed a reckless spirit. He preferred the rumble of dice over the planning of harvest, and the glint of ale in tavern mugs over the glimmer of gold in his mother's treasury. Murders, debts, and tavern brawls, these were the whispers spun in hushed tones whenever Lucian's name surfaced. And as Ulrich recounted one particular autumn, the whole village trembled at what transpired next. Helena Grey, a woman once known for her elegance and kindness, had become the very image of despair. Her husband, Lord Alden Grey, had died in mysterious circumstances 3 winters prior, an accident, the local magistrate claimed. But some who knew better suspected darker forces at work. Left with the estate and a son who trampled it away, Helena saw her lands shrink, her fields go untilled. The oppressive weight of debts pressed upon her shoulders until there was no solace left but a desperate plan. A hushed murmur rippled through the audience. Helena Grey's plight was common knowledge. The villagers still recalled the day of her husband's funeral, when her red-rimmed eyes and wan face had stood at the pulpit. But no one dared speak of the chilling rumor, that Lord Alden had been murdered, and that his spirit now crept unseen through those very halls. Ulrich cleared his throat and continued. Indeed, Lucian had gambled away nearly everything. With creditors knocking at the door and collectors brandishing threats, Helena made a decision that would shape the fate of Ashford Hollow. She orchestrated a marriage, a union not of hearts, but of necessity. A woman called Myra Lynn was to be brought from distant Drake Moor, her family indebted to the Greys. Myra was young, virtuous, and fiercely proud, the only daughter of a minor scholar. Her family's debt was enormous, ancient loans inherited across generations. Helena knew that by marrying Lucian to Myra, a sizable sum could be cleared, at least temporarily. Throughout the village, there were warnings: beware the grey heir, some said. He has a thirst for ruin. Yet Myra Lynn, raised on tales of honor and duty, accepted her family's bargain. Her boat arrived from the coastal town before the frost claimed the first leaves. She came dressed in simple silks of moonlight blue, her long black hair gleaming, her skin as pale as porcelain. Lucian, whose reputation trembled on the edge of infamy, barely spared her a glance when they first met beneath the grand oak in the courtyard. Lucian was as proud as he was ruthless, Ulrich said, his voice low. He barely concealed his disdain for the girl who stood there as though her very life depended on this marriage because, of course, it did. No love bloomed that day, instead, a cold pact was sealed. The wedding feast was somber, the candles dim. One could almost sense the old manor holding its breath, as though it sensed the doom to come. Myra's eyes remained downcast as the rings were exchanged. At night, she lay in her opulent chamber, staring at the carved beams overhead, wondering if her own dreams would soon be stolen by this loveless arrangement. Lucian, meanwhile, returned to his indulgences, late nights in smoky taverns, laughter echoing while gold exchanged hands. Helena, ostensibly content that her plan was in motion, collapsed into her chambers at midnight, sleep overtaking her troubled mind even as the howling wind clawed at the windows. But the story does not end there, Ulrich murmured, pausing as his lantern's flame flared. For Ashford Hollow is no ordinary village, and the Grey Manor no ordinary home. Within those walls, a secret older than the name Grey itself lay buried, a well ancient, half-collapsed hidden behind a tapestry in the servants' corridor. Its black depths were said to have claimed souls centuries ago. Helena knew of this well, and she thought to use it as a final act of desperation. She believed that once Lucian's debts were paid, she could free herself of this nightmare. But she failed to account for forces she could not control. A collective shiver passed through the listeners. Ulrich let the words hang in the cold night for a moment before pressing on. In the weeks that followed, Lucian's careless revels continued. He hardly noticed Myra's quiet suffering, her trembling hands when she served dinner, her pale face as she wandered the halls at dawn, unable to sleep. Yet rumors spread. One night, the cook, old Marta, overheard a whispered conversation between Helena and Lucian in the shadowed west wing. "Bring her to the well," Helena hissed. "Tonight. She is nothing but a means to an end. As soon as I have the final coin, we shall cast her into the blackness and be rid of her forever." Lucian smirked, but his eyes flickered with unease. The well, they said, was cursed once a gateway to the unquiet dead. Myra, with her keen intuition, sensed the coldness in Helena's tone when her mother-in-law greeted her each morning. She tried to appeal to Lucian, beseeching him for kindness, but he parried her entreaties with scorn or, worse, icy indifference. Little did he know that the household maid, Isla, and a handful of loyal servants fearful of Helena's wrath yet bound by conscience had already begun to whisper among themselves, plotting to warn Myra of the danger that awaited her. Ulrich paused again, allowing the distant howl of a wolf to punctuate the silence. That night, as the full moon peeked through tattered clouds, Helena descended into the servants' corridor. Myra, sensing something amiss, woke to footsteps outside her chamber. She peered through the crack in the door and saw her mother-in-law's silhouette, a lantern clutched in a trembling hand. Myra's heart thundered in her chest as the door creaked open. Helena stood there, her face pale, lips pressed into a tight line. "Myra Lynn," Helena said, her voice low as a dagger's glint, "put on this cloak of gray." She held out a rough shawl, ashen as ash. "We must go to the old well. You owe a life service to the gray name. And remember, no one must hear our passage through these halls." Myra shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "Why? What have I done to deserve this?" But Helena's eyes hardened. "It is not what you have done, child. It is what I must do to save my son, my legacy." The crowd leaned forward as Ulrich's voice became a whisper. Myra's pulse thrummed. She tried to resist, but Helena's grip was iron. As they passed through the corridors, Isla the maid slipped out of the shadows, her face ashen. She whispered urgently to Myra, "Beware the well, my lady. They do not intend to save your life." But before Myra could react, Helena shoved her toward the stone steps that led down into the darkness. The lantern's flame waned as Ulrich described the final moments of that chapter. Below, the old well yawned like a mouth waiting to devour. Myra, her heart in her throat, saw her reflection in the murky water, her pale face twisted in fear. She saw Helena's lantern cast dancing shadows on the slick stones. And she heard Lucian's mocking laughter drifting down from above, though she could not see him. "Remember, child," Helena rasped, "you exist only because of me. After tonight, no one will know or care where you lie." Ulrich's eyes glowed as he lifted his lantern higher, revealing the rapt faces in the crowd. And so, under the pale silver of the moon, Myra Lynn was cast into the well. Her scream, high and desperate, echoed through the stones, until it was swallowed by the darkness. And the lantern's light flickered once, then went out. Those who would follow knew they would never see her again, or so they thought. A hush settled as Ulrich lowered his voice to a mere breath. They believed Myra Lynn's story ended there. But on nights when the moon is full and the wind carries a chill, some say you can hear her cry from the depths, her spirit longing for justice. And those who dare tread near the gray estate after midnight sometimes glimpse a figure pale, ethereal, drifting through the halls, searching for someone to hear her plea. At that moment, a sudden gust snuffed out several lanterns, leaving the courtyard half in shadow. A distant howl shattered the silence, and the villagers gasped in unison. Ulrich's voice, now scarcely more than a breath, declared, "Stay close and keep your lanterns lit, for our journey into the depths of this sorrow has only just begun." A pale mist clung to the grass beyond the gray estate as dawn's first light trembled on the horizon. Word had spread through Ashford Hollow like wildfire. Myra Lynn, the gentle bride, had vanished beneath the stones of the ancient well. Some whispered that the night itself had swallowed her, others suspected darker deeds. Now, as villagers gathered near the iron gates, dread hung thicker than any morning fog. Among them was an old farmer named Tobias Reed. He peered at the manor through squinted, rheumy eyes. I heard echoes coming from that well, he muttered to his wife, Hester. A woman's cry, like a lamb lost in the hills. Hester shuddered, clutching her shawl. Be silent, Tobias, no one knows what horrors await beyond those walls. Inside the manor, a silence so heavy it felt palpable lay between yawning corridors and dusty furniture. Helena Gray paced her private sitting room, flicking her gaze between the heavy oak door and the tapestry that concealed the servants' corridor. Her heart thundered, each beat felt like a hammer striking metal. Lucian was nowhere to be found, likely still drowned in delirious revelry at the Rusty Tankard Tavern. She clenched her fists, her knuckles paling. She had planned it meticulously. Once Myra was gone, the family's debts would vanish like morning dew. Yet now, standing before a gilded mirror, Helena's reflection seemed to mock her. Her once elegant features had sunk into hollow lines of guilt. She lifted trembling hands to her face, as though trying to wash away the terrible memory of shoving the innocent bride into the well. Just then, the door rattled. Isla, the young maid who had witnessed too much, slipped inside, her eyes wide with fear. "My lady," she began, voice barely audible. I heard noises. Something unnatural." Myra's cry so heart-wrenching. It came from the well. Helena's lip curled into a snarled half-smile. "The foolish girl will learn the world cares not for her lament." She was a liability. But the words tasted bitter on Helena's tongue. Deep down, she feared that Myra's spirit might not rest, that vengeance could rise from the darkness in ways she could not yet fathom. Isla swallowed hard. Others saw it, 2 servants tremble, dogs howl at the gate, and the wind carries faint sobs. There are tales of a pale woman drifting between the trees at dusk. They say her hair is soaked with water and her gown stained with mud. "That is mere superstition," Helena snapped. Yet even as she spoke, her heart squeezed with panic. She flicked her gaze toward the tapestry behind her. Something tugged at her mind, a notion that perhaps the well was not just a pit of stone and water, but a portal to retribution. Isla hesitated, as though weighing her next words. "My lady, maybe we should retrieve the body. If we simply leave her down there, the shame will endure. I know of an ancient rope tied to the dais behind the tapestry. We might pull her up, give her a proper burial." Helena's breath lodged in her throat. "Retrieve her? You would have me commit a greater sin, expose what we have done." She turned away, pressing a hand to her throbbing temple. "No. I cannot allow it." Isla's face fell. She had hoped to assuage the rumors, to soothe the restless spirit with a burial rich in ceremony. But if Helena refused, what could she do? She bowed her head, murmuring, "As you command, my lady," and slipped away, leaving Helena alone with her fear. Meanwhile, Lucian staggered from the rusty tankard into the pale morning light. The tavern's warmth had given way to a bone-chilling breeze. Each step he took toward the manor felt like wading through honey. The world spun around him. Memories of Myra's pale, pleading face surfaced, her wide, terrified eyes as she clenched the rough shawl Helena had forced upon her. Guilt hammered in Lucian's chest, yet he dismissed it as the distant echo of too many ails. A malnourished dog, its ribs visible beneath matted fur, slunk out from behind a barrel near the gate, letting out a low whine. Lucian reached down with a drunken grin to scratch behind the animal's ears. "Easy, Mutt," he slurred, then lurched upright. "Hold on, something's amiss. The air, it tastes of cold sorrow." He shook his head, as if clearing away cobwebs, and staggered forward. Inside the courtyard, wildflowers once vibrant wilted against the stone path. Lucian blinked. The well, nestled behind an overgrown hedge, glimmered in the dawn's light. For a fleeting moment, he thought he saw a pale shape stirring among the reeds, a white dress, long dark hair, and those mournful, brown eyes. He reached out, but the figure dissolved like mist. His breath caught. Was this a drunken hallucination, or something far more sinister? He approached the well's edge, heart pounding. Stones, hastily piled over the opening, had been shifted. A small gap remained, revealing inky water below. He leaned closer, squinting. His throat constricted as a single drop of water rippled silently on the surface. Was that a face? He flinched back, nearly toppling over. "Myra," he whispered, voice cracked. "Is that you?" Only silence replied. Lucian scrambled backward, his stomach roiling. He felt exposed, as though unseen eyes glowed in the darkness beneath the stones. A sudden gust rattled the iron bars on the gate, and Lucian's breath froze. He knew he should call for help, but dread rooted his feet. Instead, he stumbled away, his mind a swirl of guilt, fear, and confusion. Later that day, as Lucian lay passed out in his bedchamber, Helena wandered the gardens, her favorite place before any of this tragedy. Roses that once smelled of velvet now wilted under her gaze. She recalled a prophecy spoken by a traveling soothsayer years ago: when water claims a bride's life unjustly, the earth itself will shake, and the dead will rise to claim retribution. Helena had laughed then, dismissing it as nothing more than an old wives' tale. Now, as she watched shadows lengthen across the overgrown hedges, she wondered if that prophecy had come to pass. Word of strange occurrences spread quickly. The gravedigger, Amos Finch, arrived late that afternoon at the unknown burial grounds, an isolated plot on a rolling hill outside Ashford Hollow. Yet when he reached the site meant for Myra's coffin, he recoiled. The earth had already been dug, the coffin-shaped trench filled with murky water. No workman could have created it. Trembling, Amos dropped his shovel and stumbled away, certain that unseen hands had prepared Myra's grave. Meanwhile, Isla paced the servants' corridor, glancing back at the tapestry that hid the well. She had lost sleep, haunted by visions of Myra's watery face. In her mind, the words of an old rhyme looped endlessly. "Beware the bride who falls in darkness deep. Her spirit stirs when mortals sleep, Through stone and spade, her vengeance wakes. And none shall rest, for none forgives her fate. Alia's lips moved in a silent prayer. She could no longer keep silent, the guilt of complicity weighed on her like a sack of stones. With determined steps, she braved the corridor and pulled aside the tapestry, revealing the coarse rope coiled upon a peg. She tugged it free, her hands slick with sweat. Tonight, she decided, Myra's body would be reclaimed from the depths. Perhaps, just perhaps, that would lay her restless spirit to rest. That evening, as a blood-red sun sank beyond the distant hills, a gathering took shape at the manor gates. A small group of villagers, Isla among them, carried lanterns and shovels, their faces pale with fear but resolute. Word had reached them of Helena's betrayal and Lucian's absence. Now they believed they must act to prevent further calamity. Among the group was Tobias Reed, his face as weathered as driftwood. "We cannot let this stand," he declared, voice trembling with righteous anger. "Myra deserves a proper burial. If the Greys won't do it, we will. But be warned, the manor itself seems alive with malevolence. Keep your lamps lit and your hearts steeled." The others nodded. Toward the servants' entrance they crept, slipping inside with caution. Isla led them, guided by flickering candlelight. Fear cooperated strangely with purpose. Each footstep toward the tapestry felt like a step into the unknown. At last, Isla drew the tapestry aside. Beneath lay the stone-lined shaft of the well, choked with fallen leaves, half-submerged stones, and the muddy residue of last night's storm. She bit her lip, hoisted one end of the rope, and tightened its coil around her forearm. The villagers formed a ring, each hand gripping the rope, prepared to pull what lay beneath to the surface. On three, Isla whispered, voice quavering. 1, 2, 3. They heaved in unison. The rope strained, groaning as though alive. For moments that stretched into eternity, nothing stirred. Then, with a sudden jolt, the rope slid through wet fingers, and the body of Myra Lynn lurched upward from the gloom. The villagers stumbled backward, horror and pity warring in their eyes. Myra's gown, once a delicate silken blue, was now ripped and discolored by mud. Her arms hung limp at her sides, her head lolled backward, long hair trailing in a dark tangle. But as the lanterns cast light upon her pale face, a collective gasp echoed through the corridor. Her eyes, those haunting brown eyes, were open, staring into nothingness. Her lips moved, forming silent words that none could hear. Isla felt bile rise in her throat. "My lady, she's alive," she choked, though everyone knew it could not be. No living heart could endure drowning in that cursed pool. Yet Myra's chest rose and fell in a breath so shallow it scarcely seemed possible. The villagers dared not approach. Instead, they watched in terror as Myra's head slowly turned, as though following a presence only she could perceive. A sudden gust gusted along the corridor, snuffing out half the lanterns. In the dimness, a soft whisper drifted, "Forgive me, forgive me." Myra's voice, ghostly and distant, resonated with anguish. A sob escaped Isla's lips. She knelt beside Myra's motionless form, pressing her ear close to that cold neck. "Myra, it's Isla. I'm here." But Myra's lifeless eyes focused on the tapestry, where the well waited beneath its heavy stones. Slowly, her arms lifted of their own accord, slender fingers pointing downward. "She must answer," Myra whispered, voice weaving between choking sobs and desperate entreaties. "She must answer for what she's done." Isla's blood turned ice. "My lady, what do you mean? Who must answer?" Myra's head lolled forward, chin resting on her chest. The whisper returned, so faint that Isla strained to hear. "Helena must pay," and then the heavy cloak of silence descended once more. Myra slumped backward, her body crumpling into Isla's arms. Despite the terror in her mind, Isla gently closed Myra's eyelids. For now, the frightened villagers carried Myra's motionless form away from that corridor, leaving behind an echo that would haunt the manor for nights to come. When Helena learned what had happened when Isla arrived at dawn, shaken and tear-smeared, her gasp sounded like a knife through the still air. She watched in horror as Myra's body was lifted onto a rough wagon that the villagers had arrived in, bound for the burial grounds beyond the hill. The sight of Myra's pale face, her locket half open, swinging with each jostle of the wagon wheels, struck Helena like a thunderbolt. She staggered backward, her mind reeling. Lucian, who had awakened to news of disturbance, rushed into the hallway. "Mother, what is this?" he demanded, eyes blazing. He had barely grasped the gravity of his actions last night, but seeing Myra's body stirred a pang of guilt that left him momentarily speechless. When he finally found words, they came trembling. "What have we done?" Helena's eyes flickered with panic. "I did what I had to do. Our debts, our name, everything was at stake." She looked to the staircase, where a young boy no more than 8 stood clutching a rag doll, his blue eyes wide with fright. It was Lucian's nephew, Emery, visiting for the semester. Emery had wandered into the corridor earlier, unseen, and now had witnessed too much. Fear and confusion clouded his gaze as he backed away, retreating to the nearest doorway. In that moment, Lucian's remaining humanity snapped free. He refused to be his mother's pawn any longer. "No," he whispered, voice thick. "I cannot let this stand." He took a step toward Helena, whose face crumpled into a mask of desperation. "You cannot defy me, this is our survival." But Lucian had already made his choice. From an inner pocket, he produced a small leather pouch containing the final sum owed to the unrelenting money lenders. He threw it onto the polished marble floor. Gold coins spilled like raindrops across the hearth. "You want money to erase our debts? Here it is. But I will not live under the stain of blood." Helena's lips trembled. Her daughter-in-law's death, the deception, the silent screams, none of it erased by spilled gold. She realized then that her carefully woven plan had unraveled, far beyond her control. With trembling hand, she reached for the brooch pinned to her gown, an heirloom shaped like a raven's wing, rumored to carry a curse. Clutching it, she sank to her knees. "Lucian, What are you doing? I'm ending this nightmare, he said, voice steady. He turned and strode out of the manor, leaving his mother crumpled before the hearth, the gold coins gleaming like scattered tears. Outside, the villagers had laid Myrolin's body upon a bier of fresh pine boughs at the green mound of the burial grounds. They dug a proper grave by lamplight, chanting an old dirge to honor the dead. Myra's locket, the one containing a lock of her mother's hair and a pressed violet, rested atop her folded hands. Isla stood guard, refusing to leave her lady's side. Each villager offered a simple prayer before stepping back, some crossing themselves, others bowing their heads. As the shovelfuls of earth fell upon Myra's coffin, a sudden gust swept through the barren field. The candles atop makeshift wooden stands flickered violently, as though an unseen hand threatened to snuff them out. A mournful breeze seemed to carry Myra's voice. Now lie I here, but justice shall not rest. My spirit stirs, unseen, unmet, until the debt is paid in full. Blood for blood, bone for bone, heart for heart. The villagers froze. Even as they lowered the last stones, the words hovered in the air, echoing through the starlit night. Isla shivered, clutching her shawl tighter. She's gone, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. She's finally at peace. Yet no one felt truly at peace. As they turned to leave, Emery's soft sobs broke the silence. The boy knelt at the edge of the mound, pressing a trembling hand against the damp soil. Will she forgive me for being helpless? He asked, voice muffled by tears. Isla knelt beside him, gently brushing the dirt from his pleading face. She forgives you, she said softly. But we must always remember, injustice left unpunished blossoms into vengeance. Lucian watched from a distance, clutching the leather pouch of gold. Guilt gnawed at him. He had not prevented Myra's death, only turned away when he should have intervened. A spectral breeze stole across the fields, stirring the grasses at his feet. In his mind, Myra's words echoed, until the debt is paid in full. He dropped the pouch, letting the gold spill upon the soft earth, where it lay scattered beneath the moonlight like fallen stars. In that moment, Lucian vowed to find a way to undo the terrible wrong. A promise both whispered and shouted into the night, as Myra's spirit rose from the mound, drifting toward the grey manor. Her pale form hovered above the fields, gliding like a swan in morning, her eyes fixed on the burning windows of the manor's highest tower. And so, as Ashford Hollow settled into uneasy rest, one truth remained unshaken: though Myrolin's body lay beneath the earth, her spirit roamed free, her vengeance only the beginning of a reckoning that none could halt. The wind carried her whispers to every corner of the village. Beware, O Grey of Ashford Hollow, for the debt remains unpaid. In darkness I bide, and in darkness you shall find me. The villagers shivered, knowing that the nights ahead would be haunted by the soft rustle of wings and the faint echo of a bride's unquiet lament, a sorrow that would not fade until true justice was served. And somewhere deep within the manor walls, Helena Grey trembled at the thought that the well she had used to bury her sins would soon reopen to claim more than just a body. Dawn had barely broken when a lone raven alighted on the crumbling gatepost of the grey estate, its coal black eyes surveying the courtyard with uncanny intent. The villagers of Ashford Hollow had begun their day with hushed conversations at the bakery and the blacksmith's forge, but all thoughts turned inevitably toward the manor at the hill's crest. Rumors of Myra Lynn's tragic burial had spread like wildfire, and now whispers spoke of strange occurrences, doors swinging open of their own accord, flickering lanterns extinguished by phantom gusts, and mournful cries echoing from the old well even as the sun shone overhead. Inside the manor, Helena Gray sat in the study that once belonged to her late husband. The walls were lined with shelves bearing leather-bound ledgers, dust motes drifting in shafts of pale morning light. She stared intently at her reflection in a small hand mirror, her once proud features drawn and hollow. Beneath her crisp gown lay a trembling heart, and each breath felt stolen. When the door creaked open, she did not startle. She had come to expect intruders of the mind more than of the flesh. Isla, the young maid who had helped retrieve Myra's body, stepped inside, clutching a worn journal with a cracked leather cover. "My lady," she whispered, voice laced with urgency, "I found this hidden behind one of Lord Alden's old tomes. It belonged to him, his private journal. I thought it only right to share its contents with you." Helena's pale blue eyes flickered with curiosity and fear. "Show me," she said softly. Isla laid the journal on the desk, her fingers trembling. The spine creaked as Helena opened it. The handwriting inside was neat yet spattered with droplets of red ink, dark, almost like blood. The earliest entries spoke of Lord Alden's travels abroad, of his fascination with ancient legends and forgotten rites. Yet as Helena turned the pages, the tone shifted to desperation. One entry, dated 3 winters past, read: "I have seen it again tonight, visions of a drowned bride whose face is veiled in sorrow. The well in the old servants' corridor speaks to me in dreams, whispering of debts unpaid. If I do not pay heed, I fear the curse will claim more than it has already. Lindra's spirit lingers, dressed in a gown of moonlit silk, her eyes glowing with unquenched yearning for justice. She stands between the walls, waiting for someone to set her free. I cannot bear it any longer." Helena's breath caught. Lindra, a name she had never heard. "Who is Lindra?" she asked, voice strained. Isla glanced down, lips pressed into a thin line. "I believe Lindra was an ancestor of ours, many generations ago. The physician's ledger in the attic refers to a young bride who drowned on her wedding night. They said her grief and betrayal had bound her to the well." Helena closed the journal with a soft snap, heart hammering. "So this well, it's been cursed for generations." She closed her eyes, steadying herself. "I thought Myra Lynn was the first victim. But now I learn that the evil lies deeper than my own sins. Perhaps Lindra has awakened anew, and Myra's death was only the spark." Isla hesitated. "My lady, should we not perhaps disturb her grave? Maybe only by laying Lindra's spirit to rest can we halt this horror. But I fear it is not so simple." Helena nodded slowly, mind racing. Gather what you can about Lindra's life. I must know how to atone for these ancient wrongs, if there is any hope of saving what remains of my family. Elsewhere in the village, Lucian Gray's turmoil manifested as nightmares so vivid he would wake gasping, drenched in sweat. He had secluded himself in the ruinous west wing, a portion of the manor that was off limits to the rest of the household for decades. Shattered windows let in cold drafts, and the wallpaper peeled in curling strips. He scrawled in a ledger, inventory of debts, hastily drawn floor plans, half-formed plans to salvage reputation. Yet his hands trembled each time he dipped his quill into ink. Late one afternoon, a crackling voice drifted from the hallway, "Lucian. Lucian. You must atone." He jolted upright, quill falling to the floor with a dull thud. He rose, footsteps echoing as he followed the sound. Through a broken door, he saw a faint silhouette drifting by the window, the spectral form of Myra Lynn. The gown she wore was now as white as bone, her hair draped across her shoulders like a shroud. She lifted a pale hand, motioning him to follow. Transfixed, Lucian obeyed. She led him through dusty passages until they reached the hidden servants' corridor. There, the well yawned like a gaping maw, its shadows shifting as though alive. Myra's face hovered just above the rim, her lips formed the words, "Save me, or suffer the dead." Lucian's knees buckled. The air grew frigid, his breath hanging as mist. He had no words to offer, only tears spilling down his cheeks. In that moment, he understood that the curse was not solely Helena's doing but the accumulation of ancestral greed and betrayal. He fell to his knees and wept, the sound echoing off stone walls. Myra's form flickered. Her voice, once distant, became a whisper in his mind, "Go to the churchyard at midnight. Seek the tombstone that bears no name. Beneath lies my redemption. Or your doom." Before he could speak, Myra disappeared, leaving Lucian alone with his guilt and a promise of doom. That evening, Helena convened a small council in the main hall, Isla, Tobias Reed, and an elderly scholar named Father Aldrich, who had arrived from the abbey upon hearing of the strange events. The flicker of candlelight cast dancing shadows across their faces as Helena recounted her discovery of Lord Alden's journal. Father Aldrich, his voice gravelly with age, stroked his snow-white beard. Lindra Gray, she was to wed a nobleman, but he betrayed her for another. On her wedding night, she was drugged and left by that very well. Her soul became bound to these walls. Any who disturbed the balance risk awakening her vengeance. Tobias, resting a hand on his weathered cane, asked, "But why now? Why does Myra's death draw her forth again?" "Because Myra's drowning was an echo of Lindra's own betrayal," Father Aldrich explained. "The blood of the innocent cries out in the dark. Myra's soul was not given peace, she joined Lindra in the abyss. Now their grief has become a force of retribution." Helena's voice trembled. "How can we stop them?" Father Aldrich closed his eyes in thought. First, we must lay Lindra's spirit to rest. We need to find her tomb a simple burial that honors her as a bride. And Myra. We must perform a cleansing rite at the well to sever her bond. But time is short. Their vengeance grows stronger with each passing hour. Alia stepped forward. I know where the old church crypt is. My grandmother used to speak of a nameless tomb hidden beneath the nave. She said no passing visitor dared descend the steps for fear of what lay within. Helena nodded, determination etched into her features. At midnight, we will go to the churchyard. Gather a lantern, a shovel, and whatever holy relics we can find. We must honor Lindra and cleanse the well. As twilight deepened, Lucian made his way across the moor toward the ruined church. The wind carried the scent of damp earth and decaying wood. He carried in his hand a silver crucifix, a single candle, and a small trowel. Each step felt laden with dread. He recalled Myra's sorrowful gaze, and the memory stung like a lash. At the closed church door, he paused. The wood was ancient, darkened by age, and carved with half-worn runes. He pushed it open, and it groaned on rusted hinges. Inside, the nave lay in shadow, the vaulted ceiling lost in darkness. Stained glass windows, cracked and faded, filtered the moonlight into dim shafts of blue and crimson. Spiderwebs draped across pews like silken veils. Father Aldrich's voice echoed from the side chapel. Over here. Lucian followed him toward a flagged stone floor. The scholar's lantern illuminated a circle of ornate carvings, an emblem of an intertwined rose and raven, a sigil of the Grey family. In the center, a loose flagstone lay slightly ajar. Tobias and Isla knelt to lift it. Dust rose in a lazy swirl as they shone their lanterns into the darkness beneath. A narrow stairwell descended into the crypt. Faint echoes met them as the last vestige of moonlight slipped away. Helena, carrying a small wooden box of funeral linens, stepped forward. I carry the shroud of Myrolyn, she whispered. It is her gift to Lindra's spirit. One by one, they descended the stairs, every creaking board amplifying their tension. At the bottom, they found themselves in a vaulted chamber lined with alcoves, each containing a simple tomb. The air was thick with the scent of damp stone and ancient incense. Candles flickered along the walls, though no wind blew. The hush was oppressively complete. A cold gust swept through the chamber as Isla's lantern revealed a tombstone bearing no name, only the emblem of the intertwined rose and raven etched into its face. Helena knelt and opened the wooden box, revealing the satin-lined shroud. With trembling hands, she unfolded it and laid it atop the empty slab. In that instant, the candle flames spiked upward, casting grotesque shadows. A pale figure emerged from the darkness, a bridal apparition clad in a gown of tattered white lace, black hair swirling like ink in moonlit water. Lindra's eyes glowed with spectral fire, her lips curved into a sorrowful smile. A bride's promise, Lindra's voice resonated softly, yet it carried through every bone in their bodies. You return to honor what was stolen. Helena rose and stepped forward. Lindra, I offer this shroud and this token of respect. Let your spirit rest, and release the debt that binds your heart. Lindra's figure drifted closer, and with each step, the candles flickered dangerously. The faint outline of Marilyn's face shimmered behind her, as though the two spirits were fused in their anguish. Father Aldrich raised his hands, chanting in a tongue older than the church itself. The ancient words seemed to reverberate through the marrow of every skull. The walls rattled, dust drifting from the ceiling. Lindra's gown billowed as if caught in a phantom wind. Myra's spirit emerged, kneeling beside Lindra's slab. Tears of spectral light trailed down her cheeks. Thank you, her voice was as fragile as a dying ember. She reached out, clasping Lindra's hand. I will guide you, she whispered. Lindra's glowing eyes softened. Then, my sister, we may at last find rest. Slowly, the two forms began to fade, first Myra's, then Lindra's, until only a faint glimmer remained, and the chamber settled into a stillness more profound than before. When the last echo of Father Aldrich's chant subsided, Isla exhaled a quavering breath. They are gone. Helena pressed her hands together in silent gratitude. But what of the well? She asked. Back at the manor, Lucian followed the small group through the moonlit corridor to the concealed tapestry. With trembling hands, he pulled it aside, revealing the well's stone rim. A chill wind rose from its depths, carrying the faintest echo of Myra's final plea, sever the bond. Release the dead. Isla knelt and sprinkled a mixture of salt and consecrated oil around the well's edge, chanting softly under her breath. Each word felt heavy, as though it carried the weight of centuries. Lucian, quaking with guilt, dipped a length of linen into the well water and then whispered a prayer over it. He tied it around a length of rope that Isla had coiled earlier. As Lucian began to haul Myra's bodiless spirit to the surface one final time, the wind howled through the corridor. Shadows warped, and at one point, the faint outline of Myra's sorrowful face appeared in the water only to vanish when he blinked. Lucian heaved with all his strength. The rope strained, and Mia's spectral form broke through the midnight surface. Lucian's knees buckled beneath the weight of her silent sorrow. He set the rope down and knelt, offering Myra's shimmering form a final blessing. I release you, Myra Lynn. No longer shall this well hold you captive. A soft glow enveloped Myra's form, and she slowly dissolved into a multitude of sparkles, drifting upward like embers on a dying fire. The wind stilled in an instant. The well, once a gaping wound in the manor's heart, felt sealed, its water still and dark. The echoes of Myra's sorrow had finally ebbed away. As dawn painted the sky in pale streaks of rose and gold, the small group dispersed with hearts heavy yet hopeful. Lucian remained at the well's edge, gazing down at the silent water. He felt as though a weight had been lifted from his soul, yet a new burden settled in its place, the promise of a reckoning with his family's past, a vow that no ghost nor any living soul would suffer. The same betrayal again. Helena, having witnessed the ritual, approached him slowly. The once imperious woman now looked exhausted yet humbled. "I do not know if forgiveness is possible," she said softly, "but I will spend my days making amends for our sins." Lucian nodded, his face etched with resolve. "I shall not be the heir of deceit," he declared. "I will dedicate my life to restoring honor to Ashford Hollow, its name, its people, and the memory of Myrolyn and Lindra Grey." Isla placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The well has been cleansed," she whispered. "But watch for the ravens, they still gather at dawn, watching. Read that journal carefully, there may be more secrets waiting to be uncovered." At her mention of the journal, Lucian's eyes glinted. He turned to the manor, its windows now bathed in the glow of morning. Somewhere within those walls lay the truth of generations past, truth that would either heal or destroy them all. As he climbed the stone steps, the first crow of a raven floated on the breeze, as if marking the beginning of a new chapter, one where the living must confront the echoes of the dead in order to find peace. The sun rose pale and listless over Ashford Hollow, as though reluctant to illuminate a landscape still haunted by the night's revelations. Despite the dawn's glow, a chill lingered in the air around the grey manor. Birds fell silent, and even the cawing of ravens seemed subdued, as if their watchful vigil had entered a more somber phase. Lucian Grey stood on the stone terrace, gazing northward toward the distant mist-clad woodlands, his mind aflame with questions that refused to be soothed. Helena Grey approached him, her silk robe whispering against the flagstone underfoot. Though dawn's first rays touched the tips of her hair, her eyes remained shadowed. "You look as though you've seen a specter in every tree," she said softly. "Are you certain what we did last night will suffice?" Lucian exhaled slowly, turning to meet his mother's gaze. "We gave Myra and Lindra the dignity that was denied them. Their spirits have sought release for centuries. But something tells me that while they are at peace, this manor still holds secrets that have yet to be unveiled." He paused, brushing a lock of dark hair from his forehead. "I cannot rest until I understand the full breadth of our family's misdeeds." Helena winced at his words, as though struck. "The cost of truth is often bitter," she replied. "Yet, if you must know more, I will grant you access to my late husband's private study. There, you might find clues to the darker passage of events you have only glimpsed." Lucian nodded, determination setting in his features. "Thank you. I will begin there." He turned from the terrace and strode through the hallway, passing portraits of ancestors draped in cobwebs. Each oval face grim, austere, seemed to watch him with silent judgment, their painted eyes glinting as if aware that the heir to their lineage would no longer tolerate falsehoods. Inside the grand library, shelves stretched to vaulted ceilings, laden with volumes bound in cracked leather, their gilt titles faded by time. Moonlight still lingered faintly on the marble floor, mingling with the warm glow of lanterns Father Aldrich had arranged before departing at first light. Helena guided Lucian to a tall, steel-bound cabinet inset with a dark wood panel carved with the Grey family crest and intertwining of rose, raven, and dagger. "This is where Alden kept his most private records," Helena explained. She retrieved a heavy iron key from her brooch and slid it into a lock that resisted for a moment before clicking open. The cabinet doors creaked on their hinges. Inside lay a small stack of folders, each labeled in Alden's neat, cursive script. I trust these belong solely to Alden, though I'm ashamed to admit I have never opened them. Lucian's pulse quickened. He withdrew the top folder, labeled A. Gray Personal. Inside, he found loose sheets of parchment, some annotated in margin with cryptic symbols. The first letter was undated, written in Alden's distinct handwriting. My dearest Helena, I fear that my dealings with Drake Moor's merchants have unleashed a force unforeseen. The legacy I sought to secure for our family has become a shackle. Tonight, I found hidden beneath a floorboard a ledger of transactions that tie our name to dark rites. If I do not expose my error, our souls may be bound for eternity. Forgive me if this letter falls into wrong hands, I intend it only for you. Yours, Alden Gray. Helena's breath caught in her throat. I never knew he wrote that. I thought his only sin was trusting the wrong associates. Lucian scanned the ledger mentioned. He removed a battered leather volume from the shelf, its pages brittle with age. The ledger detailed shipments of rare herbs, alchemical reagents, and exquisite textiles. Certain entries, however, bore symbols that made Lucian's stomach twist, an inverted crescent next to an item called fleur de souffrance, and a notation of nightly gatherings beneath the moons. Waning light. Fleur de souffrance, Lucian whispered. It meant flower of suffering in French, a phrase that resonated with horror. He dealt in more than trade goods. He trafficked in arcane implements, perhaps even summoning rituals. Helena's face drained of color. Those nights he spoke of. He believed he could draw wealth and power from an older force that slumbered beneath our ancestral lands. He never spoke of it directly, but I recall him returning to his study with eyes aflame, chanting incantations he adapted from texts in Latin and an ancient tongue I could not decipher. Isla slipped into the library, her lantern flickering. Lady Grey, Lord Grey, forgive me for eavesdropping. She halted as she saw the ledger. I found something in the manor's archives, a reference to an old family vault beneath the chapel. It said Alden built a sealed chamber, accessible only by a key hidden in his study. I can help you find it. Lucian exchanged a glance with Helena. Lead the way. An hour later, the trio arrived at the ruined chapel on the west side of the estate. The building had long been forsaken, windows shattered, ivy strangling the stone walls, and the bell tower leaning precariously toward the earth. The door was swollen by dampness, but Isla forced it open with a groan. Inside, dust lay thick upon pews and crumbling frescoes depicted scenes of sorrowful saints. A set of weathered stone steps descended from the floor of the sanctuary into darkness. Isla held up her lantern as they descended. The air grew stale, tinged with a faint aroma of sulfur and damp cedar. At the foot of the stairs stood a mahogany door embedded in the rock, its surface carved with arcane glyphs and the grey crest. If this is the vault, no wonder it has been forgotten, Helena murmured. Lucian produced the same iron key that had unlocked Alden's cabinet. With a twist, The door creaked open, revealing a narrow chamber. The lantern's glow revealed a stone altar at the far end, upon which rested a carved obsidian box bound by a silver chain. Strange runes were etched across its surface, runes that Lucian recognized from the journal as symbols of binding and release. Helena hesitated, her fingers trembling as she reached for the chain. "Gone are the days when our family's power derived from such darkness," she whispered, voice thick with regret. "If this box contains Alden's regrets, I fear what could still be unleashed." Lucian stepped forward, eyes fixed on the obsidian box. "We must know. Only by confronting the truth can we end this curse." He unclasped the silver chain and lifted the lid. Inside lay a velvet pouch, stained by time, and beneath it a folded vellum scroll sealed with crimson wax bearing Alden's signet. With a deep breath, Lucian broke the seal and read the scroll. "On the eve of Sam Haines' ascent, I, Alden Grey, having bartered my soul and the legacy of my name, bound myself in blood to secure prosperity for my family. The rites I performed demanded the sacrifice of innocence beneath the eye of the crescent moon. I offer this confession so that any who follow may undo the pact that has cursed my bloodline. Alden Grey." A gasp escaped Helena's lips. "He sacrificed someone for wealth and power," she whispered. "No wonder Myra's spirit found no rest. She was the innocent offered to the dark forces." Isla's face turned ashen. "If we do not break this pact tonight, our family's curse will continue to unravel Ashford Hollow. The spirits of every wronged soul will rise." Lucian rose, rolling the scroll with careful hands. "Then we shall break it." Father Aldrich spoke of a ritual of liberation, one requiring equal parts remorse, sacrifice, and the voice of truth. "We have yet to ask the villagers to bear witness and speak their grievances against the Greys, so that every ill deed is laid bare." Helena nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "At dusk, we will convene in the chapel. We'll invite the villagers. Only then can we force the pact's undoing." The afternoon sun slanted across broken glass as villagers gathered in the chapel's rubble. Word had spread. Marked men, women, and children filed through crumbling doors, their expressions a blend of dread and consternation. Among them were caretaker Amos Finch, Tobias Reed, and Father Aldrich, who had returned to preside over the forthcoming ritual. A makeshift stage was erected from wooden planks salvaged from the nave. Kegs of water and small bowls of salt were placed around the once hallowed altar. A single brass censer dangled from a beam overhead, its chains rusted but intact. Candles flickered in iron sconces, though none dared light them for fear of disturbing the ill-omened air. At the center of the stage, Lucian stood in plain linen robes, no noble garb, no fine silks. Helena, too, had traded her satin gown for a simple gray shift. They faced the villagers with solemn resolve. Father Aldrich, seated on a battered wooden bench to their right, lifted a hand for silence. "Tonight," he said, voice echoing in the hollow chamber, "we gather to confront a darkness that has bound the Grey family for generations. We call upon every wronged soul, those whose lives were destroyed by the avarice of our ancestors. Tonight, their voices shall be heard, and a pact shall be undone. A hush fell over the crowd. Isla stepped forward with the obsidian box in her hands, placing it on the altar. The ring of metal and stone drew all eyes. Lucian opened his mouth to speak but found his words caught in his throat. He gestured for his mother to begin. Helena's chest quivered as she raised a trembling hand. I, Helena Grey, humbly stand before you to confess the grievous wrongs committed by myself and my husband, Alden Grey. I confess that under the guise of securing my family's future, I allowed my son to cast an innocent bride Myrolyn into the shadows of the well. Her spirit, and that of Lindra Grey before her, have haunted this manor for centuries. I now ask for your forgiveness. A discordant murmur rippled through the villagers. Some cried out in anger, others closed their eyes in solemn prayer. Tobias Reed stomped his cane once on the stone floor. Your confession means nothing without restitution, he barked. How can we forgive when your family has brought nothing but sorrow upon us? Father Aldrich raised his hand for silence. Let each who was wronged now speak. Let their truth be a blade that severs the blood-bound chain. The first to speak was an older woman named Greta Mallory, whose family had once tilled fields owned by the Greys. My father's lands were seized to pay debts, she said, voice quavering. We starved through winter, and my father died in that cold. My children wept for bread, and the grey coffers grew fatter. She spat on the ground. There was no pity. Only arrogance. Next, a schoolmaster named Edmund Hawke, eyes damp with remembered pain, stepped forward. My brother, Archibald Hawke, sought help from this family when he fell ill. My brother labored day and night to repay them, yet they took his wages and left him to die. Edmund's lip quivered as he sank to his knees. I curse the name Grey. Behind him, young Ruth Bentley barefoot, her dress tattered added her grief. My mother sold her pearls to attend a Grey ball. When she fell sick, they refused her entry to the manor. She died at the gates, clutching her pearls. Ruth held up a single pearl on a thread. She said, Greys see none but themselves. One after another, the villagers stepped forward, each voice weaving a tapestry of betrayal, lost homes, stolen crops, loans exacted at usurious rates, vows broken in the dead of night. Each confession struck Lucian like a blow to the chest. He realized the magnitude of the darkness embedded in his bloodline. Tears slid down his cheeks as each revelation sank into his soul, each voiceless spirit vocalized its pain. When the final villager had spoken, Father Aldrich rapped his staff on the floor. Silence returned thicker than before. The pact of our ancestors thrived on secrecy and fear. Tonight, we have shattered those veils. Lucian Grey, step forward. With trembling resolve, Lucian advanced to the obsidian box. He reached inside and withdrew Alden's crimson-sealed scroll. The symbols on the box glowed faintly as though reacting to the confessions that had filled the room. Lucian took a deep breath, broke the seal, and read aloud the words of Alden's confession. The ancient glyphs across the box's surface began to pulse in dim, red light. And so, with this voice I cast off the shadow upon my name, Lucian proclaimed, voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. By the testimonies of those I have oppressed, and by the spirits of Myrolin and Lindra Grey, I abolish the bond of blood that has chained us to this sinister legacy. May this act of truth and remorse sever the pact forged in darkness. As Lucian uttered the final words, the air in the chapel rippled. A gust of wind coursed through the broken windows, extinguishing several lanterns. The runes on the obsidian box flared briefly before dimming into nothingness. A palpable hush descended, even the ravens outside fell silent. Suddenly, a crack like thunder ripped through the chamber. The stone floor at Lucian's feet split, and from the fissure emerged two translucent figures, Myrolin and Lindra Grey, hovering in luminous sorrow. Their eyes, once filled with grief, now blazed with subtle warmth. Myra extended a pale hand toward Lucian, eyes filled with forgiveness. Your repentance paves the way, she whispered, voice echoing like a distant melody. We go at last. Lindra placed a spectral hand on Myra's shoulder. Our vengeance fulfilled, we release this place. She turned toward the villagers. Ashford Hollow shall know a new dawn, one unburdened by the sins of the past. A radiant pulse of light emanated from the chapel floor, as though two souls ascending in the pearl-scent glow of sunrise. Myra and Lindra smiled, then dissolved into a shower of luminous motes that drifted upward through the broken rafters and vanished into the morning sky. In the aftermath, the chapel seemed somehow lighter, less oppressive. Father Aldrich knelt in prayer, tears streaming down his cheeks. The villagers exhaled in collective relief, some embracing one another, others simply bowing their heads in quiet wonder. Helena pressed Lucian's hand. You have saved us all, she whispered, voice thick with gratitude and relief. Our land, our name, and our souls are finally free. Lucian shook his head, exhaustion and humility mingling in his expression. No, Mother. It was the courage of those who spoke here tonight that truly severed the darkness. I only gave them a voice. Isla stepped forward, her lantern's glow warming the scene. The well and the chapel no longer harbor sorrow, she said, voice bright with hope. But the manor still stands. We must rebuild, face the future with honesty and compassion. The villagers dispersed, their footsteps echoing through the hallowed space now freed from ancient curses. Only Lucian and Helena remained, gazing at the extinguished lanterns and the shattered runes on the obsidian box, remnants of a legacy now laid to rest. As Dawn's rosy fingers climbed higher, Helena sighed, her shoulders slumping for the first time in years. For the first time, I see that power meant nothing without virtue. Together, we will restore Ashford Hollow's honor and our family's soul. Lucian looked westward, toward the distant woodlands where the first birds began to sing. The spirits are at peace, he murmured. But so many scars remain. We must heal them. His gaze drifted back to Helena. Let us begin by restoring the fields, repairing the homes, and ensuring that no other soul suffers the fate of Myrolin or Lindra Grey. Helena placed a hand on his arm, eyes bright. Yes. Together. And so, with a final glance at the vault beneath the chapel, Lucian and Helena ascended the steps. The rising sun painted the horizon in hues of gold and amber, promising days of renewal. Though the gray name would forever carry the weight of past misdeeds, it now also bore the light of redemption, a testament to the power of truth, the resilience of community, and the enduring hope that even the darkest legacies can be transformed by courage and compassion. Weeks had passed since the ritual in the ruined chapel, weeks in which the skies above Ashford Hollow turned a steady blue, fields of golden grain swayed in the gentle breeze, and the manor's weary walls began to salvage a semblance of dignity. Yet, as the village began to heal, Lucian Gray felt an unsettling echo within the marrow of his bones, as though some wounded fragment of his family's legacy still pulsed beneath the surface. He moved through the manor corridors newly swept, curtains hung in place of splintered shutters, trying to believe that the ancient curse had been vanquished. But on certain nights, when the moon hung low and cold, he would rise and wander the echoing halls in silence, listening for a faint, distant sob that should no longer exist. One morning, as Lucian walked the edge of his fields, he encountered Tobias Reed, his ragged cloak damp with dew. "Some of the crops have begun to wilt," Tobias reported in a grim tone. "And there's naught in the southeast field but shriveled stalks. I fetched some soil to show you." He handed Lucian a handful of loamy earth, once rich and dark, now crumbling into grey ash. In that instant, Lucian felt a chill. "This is the field where Myrolin's body was interred beneath the pine boughs," he murmured. "If the soil itself bears the sickness, our work may not be done." Helena emerged from the field house, a shawl draped tightly about her shoulders. "I have other news," she said, voice low. "Livestock have been found dead by the lake at dawn, no wounds, just lifeless bodies with glassy eyes. The townsfolk grow fearful, whispering that Myra's spirit roams beyond the manor now, seeking vengeance wherever darkness remains." Later that day, Lucian summoned Father Aldrich to the manor's private study. The scholar, weary but resolute, stepped into the circular chamber where ancient tomes lined the shelves. Lucian spread his hands over the withered soil sample. "The land is sick," he said. "It is as if the root of all life has been poisoned." He described the dead animals, the failing crops. Father Aldrich's eyes narrowed. "Curses can cling to earth as fiercely as they cling to souls," he replied. "Perhaps Alden Gray's bargain was more than a simple blood pact. Perhaps he bound not only spirits but also the land itself. If so, then the bloodline must be cleansed at its source." "And what source do you speak of?" Lucian asked, the furrows between his brows deepening. Father Aldrich approached a dusty cabinet and retrieved a weathered folio. "Look here, under the chapter entitled De Lavacrum Terra, on the washing of earth. Alden wrote of a secret crypt below the manor, beneath the old wine cellar. He believed that if he could summon wealth from the depths of the earth, he must also offer a bond in exchange. To break the curse entirely, we must perform a ritual at the crypt to purge the soil he tainted." Lucian's heart pounded. "Lead me there." As the sun dipped behind the sugar maples, Lucian, Helena, Isla, Tobias, and Father Aldrich descended along the narrow spiral staircase hidden in the manor's south wing. Dust motes danced in their lantern light as they pressed deeper into the bowels of the earth. At last they arrived at a heavy stone door, its surface carved with ancient runes and the same intertwined rose-raven emblem they had first encountered in the chapel. Lucian placed his trembling hand on the emblem, recalling the moment their ancestors sealed this chamber to conceal the ritual's mechanics. "Remember," Father Aldrich whispered, "our purpose is not to condemn the past but to heal it. Speak words of sorrow for every life lost, for every sin committed. Only then can the earth receive absolution." Lucian nodded, drawing a small silver dagger from his belt, a relic found in Alden's study, inscribed with protective glyphs. With a deep breath, he pressed it into a notch, and the door grated open. A fetid breeze rushed forth, carrying a scent of damp stone and mildew. Within lay a vaulted crypt, its floor slick with what at first appeared to be water, but in the lantern's flicker revealed a thin sheen of black oil. Dozens of earthenware jars lined the walls, each labeled with a cryptic symbol, some bearing names: Gwyneth Ellis, Cormac Delaney. The souls of those who had reverently and unwittingly fueled Alden's incantations, perhaps. Helena's gaze darted across the jars, her face paling. "Those are the names of villagers who disappeared years ago under the guise of selling produce to the manor. They never returned. Their families thought them lost to other towns, but they were sealed here, part of Alden's cunning plan." Tobias gripped his staff. "No wonder the fields were cursed. Each jar's contents feed the earth with dark energy souls unwillingly offered in sacrifice." Lucian stepped forward. He pulled from his tunic the scroll of Alden's confession and placed it on a stone pedestal at the crypt's center. "We must enact the rite of washing," he said. "Father Aldrich, instruct us." Father Aldrich took a leather pouch filled with consecrated salt and laid a white linen cloth by the pedestal. "We begin by chanted lamentations to acknowledge each lost soul," he said, touching the scroll reverently. "Speak their names aloud, pronounce confession, and apply salt to the urns. I will invoke the cleansing prayers." As he spoke the first words of the ancient liturgy, a low rumble reverberated through the chamber like the distant echo of a storm beneath the earth. Isla began chanting, "Gwyneth Ellis, I mourn your fate, may your soul find peace beyond this dread. Cormac Delaney, I lament your loss, may your spirit be free from this burden." One by one, each member of the group took a turn, murmur chanting names and sorrowful words of atonement. Tobias spat on the floor and thudded a lump of salt onto each jar, the coarse crystals hissing as they touched the oily residue. Each hiss sounded like a scream in the dark. Heart-like warmth flickered in Father Aldrich's lantern, and Lucian felt sweat beat at his temples despite the damp chill. Suddenly, a gust surged through the crypt, extinguishing their lanterns in a single breath. Darkness pressed against them, punctuated only by the flicker of ghostly blue flames that circled each jar. The jars rattled, as though gripped by unseen hands desperate to escape. A sharp, disembodied wail echoed off the stone walls, an anguished cry that cut through every soul present. Lucian's heart hammered. "Proceed," he cried, raising his voice over the cacophony. He cursed Alden's name, confessing in a resounding shout, "I renounce the deceit of my bloodline. I declare that no more souls shall be ensnared by our grasp." Helena, voice shaking yet resolute, followed Lucian. "I own the guild of my lineage. I offer my regrets on behalf of my son, so that the earth of Ashford Hollow may be made whole again." As the last confession faded into silence, the crypt trembled. The jars cracked, splintering in a spray of oily water that hissed and steamed where it touched the cold floor. The names of Gwyneth and Cormac etched in spidery letters faded from their surfaces, leaving behind shards of broken clay. A final crescendo of spectral wails rose, then shattered into a silence as complete as an empty tomb. In that hush, Father Aldrich chanted the final prayer, "Terra Redempta, Animi Liberi Land Redeemed, Souls Liberated." From the pedestal, the scroll of confession fluttered free, drifting downward as though carried by invisible hands. It landed at Lucian's feet, opened to the line, "By this confession, the chains of darkness shall be undone." A pale glow suffused the crypt as the jars crumbled to dust, and the oily residue drained into fissures in the stone floor, vanishing as though devoured by the earth itself. The rancid scent dissipated, replaced by a fresh, minty fragrance like spring rain upon fertile soil. Lucian knelt, pressing his hand to the spot where the jars once stood, feeling a warm pulse, as though the land beneath him had exhaled in relief. Helena wept softly, her tears pattering on stone. Isla brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. Tobias sank to one knee, offering a humble prayer. Father Aldrich, staff in hand, rose to his full height. "The land is cleansed," he proclaimed. "The last bonds of Alden's pact lie broken. The spirits have flown free, and the curse is no more. From this night forth, Ashford Hollow shall feel the warmth of new dawns." The journey out of the crypt was easier, as if the earth itself guided their steps. When they emerged into the night air, a soft rain fell, each droplet sparkling in lantern light like a promise of rebirth. The manor's stone facade glistened under the downpour, the scars of age and curse seeming to fade before their eyes. In the days that followed, miracles subtly unfolded across the grey estate. Wilted fields grew strong again, vines flourishing where they had once withered. The livestock at the lakeshore returned to grazing, their coats glossy, their eyes bright. The village well, long polluted, bubbled with clear, cold water. Children laughed as they splashed in the renewed spring, mothers whispered prayers of thanksgiving, and the facade of the grey manor shed a layer of its haunting dread. Yet some wounds would not heal so easily. Emery, Lucian's young nephew, had been deeply affected by the convulsions of the crypt. He suffered nightmares of ghostly brides and whispered laments. Lucian found him one night, curled on the threshold of his door, eyes wide and shimmering in the moonlight. "Uncle Lucian," Emery whispered, "I still hear a voice, calling me to the well." Lucian knelt beside his nephew, pulling him into a gentle embrace. "That voice belongs to the past," he soothed. "But for you, the future is yet unwritten. We have broken the bonds that held those spirits. Your dreams will find peace soon, I promise. Emery buried his face in Lucian's chest, and after a moment, his breathing evened. Lucian kissed the top of his nephew's head. Rest now, Emery. All is well. Despite the outward transformation, Helena and Lucian both knew the journey was not yet complete. They must breathe new life into a family tradition poisoned by greed, care for those they had harmed, invest in the community, and remain vigilant against the darkness that once lurked beneath their feet. On the horizon, the first shafts of sunlight broke through clouds, painting the landscape gold and green, an emblem of hope rising from the ashes of despair. Under that dawning sky, the Grey family took their first steps into an uncertain future, determined to honor the memories of Myra Lynn, Lindra Grey, and every soul sacrificed to Alden's ambition. For only by carrying their lessons forward, by tending both land and heart, could the legacy of Ashford Hollow be remade into something worthy of its past, free from the shadows that had once bound it. Spring had finally settled over Ashford Hollow, its gentle rains coaxing emerald grasses and wildflowers from the once blighted fields. The Grey Manor, newly renovated after decades of neglect, seemed to breathe with renewed life. Lucian spent dawn walking the length of his lands, greeting villagers, rebuilding fences, repairing barns, and sowing fresh seed. Though the land had been cleansed of ancient curses, its people bore scars of fear and mistrust. Lucian devoted himself to restoring not only his family's once proud reputation, but also the bonds between the manor and the village. One morning, just as the sun gilded the orchard blossoms, Lucian and Helena convened with Tobias Reed and Father Aldrich in the manor's great hall. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, illuminating a long oak table strewn with grain samples and livestock health reports. "Fields are yielding good spring wheat," Lucian reported, smoothing a handful of disc-shaped kernels across the table. "But I worry that a single bad season could undo our progress." He looked to Father Aldrich. "What of rebuilding the granary and implementing more prudent storehouses for next year?" Father Aldrich nodded. "I will speak with the Farmers Guild and arrange for communal granaries. We must foster unity, share resources in lean years, ensure that no family suffers need." He paused, reverent. "And we must not forget that Myra's spirit still watches over these lands. Each harvest from now on must include an offering of grain at her memorial beneath the old pine tree." Helena stepped forward, her expression determined. "I will commission a small shrine near Myra's resting place. But I also received word from Drake Moor, the port town my father once visited, a letter, delivered by a traveling merchant. It carries a warning we cannot ignore." A hush fell over the hall. Tobias leaned forward, eyebrows knitting. "A warning? From Drake Moor? What has that to do with our fields?" Helena unfolded a parchment, sealed with a crest unfamiliar to most, an Ouroboros encircling a burning star. "My father's dealings with Drake Moor's Order of the Sable Lotus were neither simple trade nor alchemical curiosity. He bartered for an artifact called the Night's Eye, a black gemstone said to hold sway over storms and fates. In return, he granted them safe passage and covered access to our manor's crypts. Now, they demand to reclaim their artifact, especially now that the crypts have been opened and Alden's ledger exposed. They claim that our ancestors transgressed a pact with their order, and that the Night's Eye must be returned, or dire consequences will follow. Lucian's jaw tightened. He had known Alden's dealings were more nefarious than the ledger hinted, but an active threat from the east was more than he had expected. Are they coming to enforce their claim? He asked. The messenger did not say explicitly, Helena replied, but the letter's final lines read, "Return the eye to its rightful stewards, or the heavens and earth shall rage against you until all that you love is torn asunder." She folded the parchment, steeling herself. Whether threat or idle boast, we cannot ignore it. Tobias gripped his cane. We have just cleansed these lands of a curse older than memory. If another force now seeks to claim its due, we must stand united. I say we prepare defenses, gather allies among the neighboring townships, and remind the Sable Lotus that Ashford Hollow is no longer subject to ancient pacts. Father Aldrich raised a finger. We must first understand the Night's Eye. Where is its last known location? Helena hesitated. Alden brought it to the crypt weeks before his disappearance. I never saw it myself, but Isla found a hidden recess beneath the stone altar where the gemstone rested. Before we destroyed the jars, Lucian sealed the eye in a lead-lined steel box which I entrusted to a secure chest in the manor's summer pavilion. Lucian's heart hammered. Possession of such a power could explain Alden's desperation, the twisted bargains, and perhaps even the creation of the Wells curse. Fetch it, he said. If this order of the Sable Lotus plans to come, we must know what we hold. That afternoon, Isla led Lucian to the summer pavilion, a simple wooden structure nestled among tulip magnolias. The floorboards moaned underfoot, as though the memory of its previous purpose whispered through the grain. Isla retrieved a small chest from beneath a worn cot and handed it to Lucian. He knelt and pried open the lid. Inside lay a smooth, palm-sized gemstone, the Night's Eye. It was as black as obsidian, yet pulsed with an inner glow like storm clouds trapped beneath glass. When Lucian touched it, he felt a tremor run up his arm, a flicker of power that set his skin prickling. Isla caught her breath. It's something about that crystal feels hungry, as though it hungers for power. Lucian nodded, placing the Night's Eye on a table. We will keep it hidden until we know our path. Thank you, Isla. Late that evening, a hush fell across Ashford Hollow. A moon, pale and wan, hung in the sky as if wary of the events unfolding. Lucian and Helena sat by a small hearth, poring over maps of Drake Moor's trade routes. In the flickering lamplight, they traced the path from the port's docks to the manor's gates. A heavy knock at the front door startled them. Lucian rose, crossing to unlatch the bolts. He swung the door open to reveal a stranger cloaked in dark indigo, face concealed by a cowl. The visitor held a sealed scroll embossed with the Sable Lotus sigil. With a curt nod, the stranger dropped the scroll at Lucian's feet and retreated into the night without a word. Lucian picked up the scroll, his pulse quickening at the weight of the seal. Helena broke the wax and unraveled the parchment, her eyes darting across the script. To the heirs of Alden Grey. The knight's eye belongs to the order. Refuse to return it, and our storms will claim blood and bone. Meet us at the Bridge of Fallen Leaves at moonrise in 3 nights' time. Do not bring steel or shield, defy this summons and you will know the true meaning of wrath. Envoy of the Sable Lotus. A cold dread settled in Lucian's gut. They give us 3 nights, he whispered, but I doubt they seek parley. More likely, they plan to seize the eye by force or unleash chaos upon us. Helena closed the letter with a nod. Then we must prepare. We have no illusions, they are masters of elemental alchemy. Summon Tobias and Father Aldrich. It falls upon us to stand before the Bridge of Fallen Leaves, not in defiance but in negotiation. If a storm must rage, let it pass without destroying all we have rebuilt. Over the next 2 days, the manor buzzed with activity. Lucian oversaw the forging of a suit of lightweight armor, mithril-plated leather that allowed for mobility while offering protection. Sir Alphon, a knight of Harmond Vale who awaited passage to permanently settle in Ashford Hollow, volunteered to accompany him. His sword, tempered in forges beyond the border, gleamed with polished steel. Alphon knelt before Lucian. My lord, I swear my blade to your cause. No ally shall stand closer. Tobias mustered a small militia of villagers, 7 able-bodied men armed with pitchforks, crossbows, and impassioned fervor. Father Aldrich took his place in the chapel at dawn, overseeing prayers for safe passage. Helena oversaw the creation of a vessel, a polished oak chest to hold the knight's eye. She and Isla sealed the lid with anointed wax and ancient runes of protection, lest the gemstone's power consume or betray its bearer. On the eve of the meeting, Lucian zipped the armor beneath his tunic, strapped a broadsword to his waist, and placed the sealed chest into a leather satchel strapped to his back. Helena, wearing her mother's ceremonial robe, soft grey silks trimmed with dove-wing lace, slipped a small dagger into her sash, its hilt carved from pale ivory. Isla, carrying Father Aldrich's prayer beads, followed alongside. As the moon climbed to its apex, Lucian led the procession, Sir Alphon's lantern in front, Helena trailing beside him, Tobias and the militia casting watchful glances, and Isla bringing up the rear. They made their way along the winding path that led to the Bridge of Fallen Leaves, a stone archway spanning a sluggish river, framed by ancient oaks whose autumnal leaves persisted in perpetual reddened hue, as though time itself were arrested there. When they reached the bridge, a scattering of fallen leaves drifted on the water's surface. At the far end stood 4 figures cloaked in the sable lotus, heads bowed, robes of midnight trimmed in silver thread that glinted in the moonlight. Each held a staff topped with a gemstone that pulsed like a dying star. Lucian drew a breath and stepped forward. I am Lucian Grey, heir of Alden Grey. I bring the knight's eye as requested. He heft the satchel into view. The tallest of the Lotus envoys raised his head. Moonlight revealed pale features, hooked nose, milky white eyes that held no pupil. He extended a slender hand. The eye, he said, voice smooth as cooled oil. Is it pristine and unblemished by mortal touch? Helena's fingers brushed the satchel's sacred runes. Its power has never been unleashed. We sealed it to protect the innocent. The envoy tilted his head, as though tasting the truth. So be it. Place it here. He gestured toward a circular stone plinth in the bridge's center, carved with ominous glyphs that pulsed faintly when Lucian's gaze fell upon them. Lucian laid the chest on the plinth. The other three envoys stepped back, hands weaving subtle motions through the air. The night's eye glowed within the chest, casting shifting shadows across Lucian's steadfast face. The tallest envoy spoke again. We shall open it, to verify its authenticity. Step back. Lucian hesitated. He felt the power thrumming through the gemstone, as though the air itself quivered. Against every instinct to retrieve the chest, he stepped backward, drawing his sword in readiness should the lotus emerge in hostility. With a practiced motion, the envoy lifted the chest's lid. The knight's eye gleamed, and upon meeting its gaze, the three other envoys exhaled. "The seal holds," said one, a slender form with a crest of silver jewels twinkling at her wrists. "The gem is whole." The tallest envoy lowered his hand. "Then we have no cause for violence," he proclaimed. His voice rang with authority. "But before we accept this truce, you must swear upon the night's eye that your family will never again traffic in forbidden pacts." Lucian swallowed. Sweat beaded at his temple. He glanced at Helena, who offered a sympathetic nod. "I, Lucian Grey, vow on this night and in the presence of Ashford Hollow's people, that no member of my bloodline shall engage in any pact mortal or arcane that threatens the safety of our realm. I renounce all ties with the Order or any other clandestine brotherhood." Silence fell. The envoys exchanged glances. The envoy with milky eyes inclined his head. "Your oath is accepted. Take the night's eye, and depart in peace. Should you break this oath, let no corner of the earth conceal you from our wrath." Helena stepped forward, voice steady. "We shall ensure no such shame returns to this name." The envoys faded into the mist, trailing silver motes that dispersed into the night air. Lucian watched them go, the weight of the gemstone pressing at his back. Once they vanished, Sir Alphonse sheathed his sword and exhaled. "Do you think we are safe?" Helena asked, voice echoing faintly over the river's gentle current. Lucian squeezed her hand. "For now, yes. But the night's eye remains a burden we must guard. We cannot forget that power, even when returned, leaves its mark." Isla stepped forward, brushing a fallen oak leaf from Lucian's boot. "The Order of the Sable Lotus may bide its time, but this land, it has found peace again." Tobias grasped Lucian's shoulder. "And so will the people, if we stand vigilant. Ashford Hollow's future is ours to shape, free from fear." As they turned back along the moonlit path toward the manor, the faint glow of dawn hovered on the horizon. Though storms had threatened again, Lucian felt a steady warmth in his chest, an ember of hope fanned by the knowledge that, together, they had prevailed. But just as dawn's first rays pierced the veil of night, Lucian glimpsed a flash of movement among the trees' shadows that seemed to watch them as they returned home. Despite the calm of their negotiation, Lucian did not doubt that the world beyond Ashford Hollow still held dangers. He gripped the Night's Eye's satchel tighter, resolved to protect his family, his land, and all who depended on them. The past had been laid to rest, and yet, beneath the surface of peace, ripples of consequence would echo long into tomorrow. Though dawn's first pale light heralded a fragile calm over Ashford Hollow, Lucian Gray could sense the lingering unease that clung to the manor like morning mist. He rose before the sun, lantern in hand, and made his way to the east wing balcony to survey the fields. The wheat swayed golden beneath a gentle breeze, and the renovated granary stood solid against the horizon. Yet Lucian's eyes fell upon a solitary crow perched atop the old well, its feathers ruffled by a faint wind that did not seem to belong to the gentle spring day. He watched as it flicked its head, black eyes glinting with intelligence. Then the bird cawed once, a harsh, rasping note that cut the hush of morning and launched into the sky, dispersing a scattering of cawing ravens that had roosted in the manor's eaves. Lucian's heart tightened. Though the vow at the Bridge of Fallen Leaves had ostensibly bound the Order of the Sable Lotus to leave the Night's Eye and Ashford Hollow in peace, that single caw felt like a warning. The Order's reach extended farther than any one negotiation. He closed his fist around the lantern's handle and made for the great hall, determined to convene a council before the day's labors began. Helena awaited him at the table, where Father Aldrich and Isla already pored over a ledger of household accounts. Tobias Reed hovered by the hearth, polishing the crossbow he had brought back from the bridge with practiced care. As Lucian entered, the others looked up, taking in the solemn set of his shoulders. "I saw the ravens again," Lucian said, voice low. "Perched around the manor at dawn. One of them cawed out at me, as if to say the Order's eyes linger yet." He set the lantern down. "We cannot assume they've truly departed. We must reinforce our vigilance." Isla nodded. "I spotted a cloaked figure near the southern woods last night, by the edge of the orchard. I thought it might be mistrustful villagers at first, but the silhouette moved with unnatural grace. Could have been a scout sent by the Order." Father Aldrich exchanged a troubled glance with Helena. "They do not seek open conflict, yet too risky. Instead, they monitor, waiting for any misstep. We must be cautious." Tobias slammed the crossbow butt on the floor. "Then let us bolster the militia. I can train a small unit of archers from among the farmers. If any stranger approaches, we will be ready." Lucian placed a hand on Tobias's shoulder. "Your loyalty is invaluable. But we must also reassure the villagers that their safety does not require arms alone. We need to rebuild trust, to strengthen bonds with neighboring townships so no one group like the Sable Lotus can isolate us." Helena met his gaze, pride shining in her eyes. "I have already dispatched a messenger to Oakmere Forge, the town to the south. Lord Calderon owes me a debt of hospitality, he agreed to send artisans and blacksmiths to help reinforce our gate and repair the old watchtower atop Hollow Hill. Father Aldrich folded his hands. And I shall prepare a pilgrimage of thanks to the spirits we released. If the villagers see that their own faith and not merely swords and armor protects them, their courage will be steadfast. Lucian exhaled slowly. Very well. We will proceed on all fronts: military readiness, diplomatic ties, and spiritual unity. Let us begin by dividing tasks. He paused, glancing toward a tattered tapestry on the far wall, one that once concealed the servants' corridor. The imprint of the well's outline still lingered behind it, a reminder that darkness could always return if left unguarded. By midday, Tobias had marshaled a small training yard behind the manor. He coached half a dozen young farmers in basic archery, how to brace their feet, aim with steady hands, and release an arrow with a firm thump rather than a tremble. Though none were professional soldiers, their nervous determination lent surprising focus to their efforts. Lucian observed from the sidelines, offering guidance and encouragement. As he did so, he felt a faint tremor in the air, an almost imperceptible hum of energy that caused a single arrow Tobias loosed into the target to veer off course by an inch. Lucian frowned, noting the impossible arc. That was no gust of wind, he murmured. Something, beneath the earth. That night, when the village stabled their livestock and the last glow of sunset faded, Lucian and Helena convened again with Father Aldrich and Isla in the former chapel, now restored as a place of quiet prayer. The flicker of white candles cast dancing patterns on the painted rafters, and the scent of fresh herbs mingled with beeswax. Lucian laid out the chest containing the night's eye upon the altar. Father, I sensed a tremor today, as if the land itself still stirs with a vestige of Alden's power, Lucian said. Could there be residual currents of energy we have not yet cleansed? Father Aldrich extended a hand over the gemstone, murmuring an incantation so soft it was barely heard. The night's eye pulsed with a ghost of light, like a single drop of ink spreading in clear water. The cleansing rites we performed targeted the crypt and the fields directly tainted by Alden's blood magic, he explained. But his ambition may have extended to broader ley lines, ancient channels of elemental energy that flow beneath the land. If so, pockets of imbalance could swirl unseen. Helena placed her hand next to Lucian's on the chest. Then we must draw out any lingering currents. How? Father Aldrich closed his eyes in contemplation. We will convene a circle of washing beneath the old oak grove, where the ley lines intersect. We shall chant the Lumen Adeptus, an invocation that calls upon the elements to rebalance and further sever the bond between the night's eye and the earth. But it requires the presence of a willing vessel to channel the energy temporarily. Lucian's brows furrowed. You propose someone offer themselves? Father Aldrich nodded gravely. Yes. One who bears no ill intent. You, Lucian, or Helena, or another of pure heart, could act as conduit. The procedure is perilous. The body will be strained by the flow of elemental forces. Yet if we succeed, the night's eye's power will lose any remaining link to these lands, and the ley lines will be cleansed. Lucian exchanged a look with Helena. She offered a resolute nod. "I will do it," she said quietly. "If my blood can purify the earth further, I will stand beneath the grove at dawn." The candle flames flickered as Father Aldrich placed a hand on Helena's shoulder. "You possess the courage of your purpose, my lady. May the spirits grant you strength." At first light the next morning, Helena made her way to the oak grove on the manor's southwestern flank, guided by Father Aldrich, Lucian, and Isla. The grove consisted of 5 towering oaks arranged in a semicircle around a natural clearing. The grass beneath them was lush and green, fed by hidden springs that bubbled through ancient roots. In the center stood a flat stone, worn smooth by centuries of weather. This would serve as Helena's altar. Father Aldrich produced a finely woven tapestry embroidered with arcane sigils. With Helena standing barefoot upon the stone, he draped the tapestry around her shoulders. "These runes will focus the ley lines flow through your vessel," he said. "When the chanting begins, hold fast to your intention, pure atonement for the wrongs your bloodline wrought." Isla and Lucian stood on opposite sides of the grove, each holding a silver bowl of consecrated salt. Tobias knelt at the edge, clutching his crossbow, ready to defend if anything went awry. The first pale rays of sunrise filtered through the canopy, illuminating the clearing with ethereal gold. Father Aldrich closed his eyes and intoned the opening phrase, "Lumen adeptus, terra purificatum." His voice trailed into a low hum. Lucian and Isla responded in kind, chanting in unison, "Ether, ignite. Aqua, flow. Ventus, breathe. Ignis, blaze. Terra, renew." With each repetition, the air in the grove grew dense, humming with unseen energy. The ground beneath Helena's feet trembled. She raised her arms, trembling as orange dawn light bathed her face. Father Aldrich stepped forward, sprinkling the first handful of salt into a nearby fissure in the earth. The salt sizzled, emitting a faint white mist that rose toward the canopy. Helena's voice joined the chant, her clear soprano weaving through the hum. "By ash and oak, by wind and spring, I offer heart and blood, to wash the streams that bind this stone." At her words, a sudden wind roared through the grove, rustling leaves with a sound like voices calling in the dark. The oak branches bent, and the sky overhead warped into swirling gray clouds even though the sun still shone on the horizon. Lucian and Isla flinched, setting an additional handful of salt at each oak's base. Tobias raised his crossbow, though his eyes betrayed relief that no foe appeared, only the raw force of nature uncoiling. Helena's voice grew strained as the energy surged through her. Her legs quaked, sweat beading across her forehead. Father Aldrich placed a guiding hand on her shoulder. "Stay strong, my lady. The currents pass through you. Let them cleanse." By now, the wind had become a gale, whipping the grass into arcing sprays of dew. Lightning flickered within the clouds, but no thunder pealed. A low, buzzing hum filled Lucian's ears, as if the entire groves of Oakmere hummed in resonance. He hesitated for a moment, fear and awe warring within him, before he and Isla sprinkled the final grains of salt into the last fissure. In that moment, the wind stilled with a deafening hush. The swirling clouds parted, revealing a shaft of sunlight that pierced the grove like a lance of brilliance. Helena collapsed to one knee, breath gone from her lungs as though a great weight had been lifted off her spirit. Father Aldrich and Isla caught her before she fell, helping her to stand. She clutched the tapestry around her as the runes pulsed once more, then faded into stillness. Father Aldrich exhaled in fervent relief. "It is done," he declared, voice trembling. "The ley lines have been cleansed, and the night's eye is severed from this land's energies. No further ripples of Alden's darkness shall taint these fields." Helena's eyes fluttered open, sheen of tears in their depths. She sank to the stone at her feet, hands pressed against her chest as she drew ragged breaths. "I feel new. Lighter, yet hollow. It is as though something left my soul." She gave a soft, exhausted laugh. "I did not think a stone could take so much from one's heart." Lucian knelt beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You have given yourself wholly for our land. I will see you cared for in the days ahead." Isla knelt on Helena's other side, holding a water skin. "Drink this. It will restore your strength." As Helena took a tremulous sip, the glow from the tapestry receded until it vanished altogether. The wind, gentle once more, carried the scent of fresh earth and wild flowers. The oak grove exhaled in a soft rustle of leaves. Father Aldrich closed the ceremony with a whispered prayer of thanksgiving to the ancient spirits who governed the elements. Lucian offered his own silent thanks, to the land, to Helena's courage, and to every soul, even those sacrificed by Alden, who now found peace. Back at the manor, preparations were underway for a communal feast. Tables were set beneath a canopy of lanterns in the courtyard. Villagers arrived bearing harvests, baskets of fresh strawberries, pots of wild honey, loaves of wheat bread baked with grain newly replanted. Laughter and music filled the air, as children danced among the oak blossoms, oblivious to the shadows that once threatened their homes. As twilight settled, Lucian took his place beside Helena at the head table. Tobias sat across from him, eyes bright and unburdened. Father Aldrich offered a benediction. "Let this feast be a celebration not only of our deliverance from curse and craft, but also of our shared future. May the bonds formed tonight endure as the oak's roots, deep, steadfast, and true." Glasses were raised, and the first toast was to the land. Lucian's voice rang clear, "To Ashford Hollow, a home reborn." The villagers cheered, and throughout the night, stories were told of fields once barren now yielding harvest, of livestock revived from the brink, and of the courage of Helena Grey, who had yielded her own strength to heal the land. Lucian and Helena stood to join the dance that followed, Helena's pale grey gown swirling beneath lantern light, Lucian's laughter blending with the revelers. As they moved among friends old and new, Lucian glimpsed a single raven alight on the manor's eaves, its gaze steady upon the celebration as though granting a silent benediction before wandering off into the starry night. Yet Lucian knew true peace was not merely the absence of curses or threats. He would remain vigilant for the Order's return, for other hidden currents still unknown. But in that moment, as music and laughter wove through the air, Lucian allowed himself to feel hope, to believe that Ashford Hollow's future was brighter than any past could ever dim. And as the oak grove's leaves rustled in a distant breeze, it seemed to echo back in promise, we remain, steadfast, beyond the darkest night. Summer's heat lay heavily over Ashford Hollow, the days stretching long and languid beneath the sun that bore no hint of the storms to come. The manor's newly rebuilt facade gleamed in the light, ivy climbing the freshly painted walls, and the restored orchard yielded plump peaches that dripped with nectar when plucked. For a time, it seemed as though the ancient burdens upon the land had truly been lifted, leaving in their place only promise and renewal. Yet beneath that veneer of prosperity, unsettling currents rippled. It began with small, almost indistinguishable incidents: an old dog howling in the dead of night, fields that ripened a shade too yellow, a strange hush falling over the woods at dusk. Lucian Gray, ever vigilant, noted these anomalies during his daily rounds. He turned over in his mind the promise he had made to guard not only the land but the people whose lives had been marred by his family's legacy. And so, on a humid morning 2 weeks after the grand midsummer feast, he convened a council in the manor's library. Helena Gray entered with measured steps, her face composed yet showing the faintest shadow of concern. Tobias Reed and Isla stood by the windows, watching as Father Aldrich, his hair now threaded with fine silver, perused an ancient codex. The chill of the library contrasted with the sun that pooled golden at the panes. "I have received word from Harmond Vale," Helena began, placing a folded letter upon the table. "A messenger arrived yesterday, bearing a missive from Sir Roland Barrow, an old ally of the Greys. He writes of travelers attacked along the old Oran road by bandits bearing black lotus sigils. They claimed they sought vengeance for the dishonorable settlement over the night's eye." Lucian's jaw tightened. So the Order still operates in the shadows, sending agents to harass our environs. Have there been any reports of casualties or missing merchants? Isla stepped forward, voice low. "A traveling peddler named Emery's Holcomb was found half unconscious by the roadside last night. His cart was stripped, his goods scattered. When villagers reached him, he muttered, 'They come in lotus masks,' whispering of broken oaths and blood debts. Before losing consciousness, he drew a charred lotus symbol on the dust, a black flower clasped in silver vines." Tobias slammed his fist on the table. "They defy our truce even now, sowing fear along our trade routes. If we do not act, our trade and livelihoods will collapse. I say we dispatch a contingent to patrol the old Oran road, drive these bandits away." Lucian weighed the argument. "We cannot mobilize the whole militia, there are tasks here at home. But we can station a small patrol of skilled archers and riders to safeguard merchants. Father Aldrich, can you lend any insight into who within these bandits might be operating?" Father Aldrich closed the codex. "Bandits rarely act in isolation. Their symbols and tactics suggest a deeper organization, likely a faction of the Sable Lotus that refused the pact, perhaps led by zealots who view any negotiation as betrayal. They might attempt to destabilize regional alliances as a prelude to a larger assault on Ashford Hollow. Helena nodded. I will send word to Lord Calderon of Oakmere Forge to request his men join the patrols. Tobias, gather your archers. Lucian and I will ride out at dusk to inspect the damage along the old Oran road ourselves. We cannot show fear, our presence must reassure villagers and merchants alike. By mid-afternoon, the manor courtyard hummed with activity. Tobias marshaled a half-dozen crossbowmen, their bold cases strapped to their leather sashes. Lucian and Helena rode their mounts. Lucian's a dappled grey gelding named Storm, Helena's a chestnut mare named Ember. Isla and Father Aldrich accompanied them on foot, Isla bearing a satchel of healing tinctures, and Father Aldrich clutching his silver-bound prayer book. As they set out along the dusty lane leading toward Oran's crossroads, the heat pressed upon them, turning the air thick and tangy with the scent of wild blackberries. Helena kept a steady gaze on the horizon, mindful of the patrols driving off any marauders. They passed fields where villagers tended their crops, wheat full grown and ready for the scythe, smiling and greeting them with hopeful eyes. Lucian offered nods and words of reassurance. He understood that even the smallest display of confidence could keep panic at bay. About 2 miles out, they encountered a peddler's overturned cart at the side of the road. Its wheel lay shattered, spokes splayed like the ribs of a fallen creature. The remains of cloth sacks stained with crimson and ash lay scattered across the dusty ground. Helena dismounted, kneeling at the edge of the cart. "Emrys, where are you?" she called softly. From behind a hedgerow came a faint groan. Lucian hastened to investigate, dismounting as well. They found Emrys Holcomb huddled in the brambles, clutching his side where a shallow cut wept blood. His grey eyes opened when Helena knelt beside him, her skilled hands pressing a cloth to the wound. "They came with lotus masks," Emrys whispered hoarsely. "Axes and swords, too. They spoke of liberating the eye's power. I tried to run. They left me for dead." Fear and pain twisted his gaunt features. Isla, having cleaned a bandage, eased it across his wound and tied it firmly. "You will be safe now," she assured softly. Father Aldrich offered a whispered prayer for his soul. Lucian helped him to his feet. "We will escort you home," he said, voice gentle yet firm. Helena surveyed the wreckage. "They not only seek the Night's Eye, but also wish to disrupt trade to starve us into submission. We must find their camp before they strike again." She turned to Tobias. "Set up a temporary camp here for Emrys. We will return him to Harmond Vale on our way back. Tobias, send 2 riders to intercept him when the trail becomes safer." Tobias nodded, curtly giving orders to 2 crossbowmen, who then hastened to secure Emrys and the cart's remnants. Lucian remounted, taking Helena's hand. "Let us press onward," he said. "The bandits will follow their usual haunts, likely the abandoned ruins of Old Sal Valley Abbey, to the east." The sun dipped low as they found themselves at the edge of a hollow where the remains of Sal Valley Abbey stood draped in briars and ivy. Once a pride of the Western Road, Only tumbled columns and a collapsed nave remained to tell its story. Lucian dismounted, striding forward with hand on the hilt of his sword. The abbey's ancient stones were streaked with black soot and fresh scorch marks. Charred remnants of fallen beams lay strewn across the courtyard. Isla crouched beside a patch of flattened grass. "They lingered here," she whispered. "See the footprints, heavy boots, stamped hastily. There are more to the north." She pointed toward a narrow aperture in the east wall, where a collapsed archway created a jagged gateway to the woods. Father Aldrich grimaced, crossing himself. This place was once consecrated ground. Now it lies defiled by brigands who yield to darkness as easily as a penitent yields to prayer. Helena tightened her grip on Storm's reins. "We follow on foot." They left their horses in a small circle, bound together to a stout felled pillar so they would not wander. Lucian and Tobias advanced with crossbows drawn, Isla trailing to their right, Father Aldrich at their flank offering silent benedictions. The moss-covered stones grew closer as they passed through the archway, revealing a narrow passage hemmed by ancient yews. The air turned cooler, scented by pine and the tang of moss. Lucian's sharp ears caught the faint echo of voices, raucous laughter and low, conspiratorial murmuring as they neared a thicket that narrowed to a small clearing lit by silver moonlight that had slipped through gaps in the tree canopy. There, huddled around a flickering brazier, were 4 figures in lotus masks and dark garb. They carved runes into wooden staff symbols reminiscent of the crypt beneath the chapel while murmuring curses in an archaic tongue. At their center lay sacks of grain and a handful of emptied silver purses, spoils from the road's wayfarers. Lucian raised a hand, a signal. Tobias knelt, knocking a bolt to his crossbow. Isla positioned herself to the east, ready to flank. Father Aldrich raised his staff, and the silver lantern he bore glowed with a soft, pearl-scent light. Helena unclasped the night's eye from her satchel, holding it aloft within its sealed box, and a faint radiance glimmered from within, as though awakening to the threat. At the sight of Helena's approach, the bandits sprang to their feet, claws of fear rippling through their posture despite the lotus masks that hid their expressions. One of them, taller, broader, stepped forward, staff in hand. "You dare bring the eye here? Do you believe your trifling seal can hold us?" His voice, sharpened by malice, echoed in the trees. Lucian advanced, voice steady. "You violate the oath sworn at the Bridge of Fallen Leaves? Lay down your arms and depart, or face the justice of Ashford Hollow." A sharp laugh cut the air, brittle as broken glass. "Oath? We have no cause to honor words uttered by fools who traded a priceless treasure for cowardice. We serve a higher purpose, liberating the eye's true strength. Step aside, or die." With that, the bandit leader raised his staff, unfurling runes that flickered with charcoal embers. 2 of his companions brandished curved daggers, leaping at Lucian and Tobias from either flank. The remaining 2 circled wider, seeking to trap Helena and Isla. Steel rang out. Tobias loosed a bolt that struck one of the dagger wielders in the shoulder, drawing a pained cry. Lucian met the bandit leader's first swing of his staff with a swift parry of his sword, sparks clashing as metal met wood. The bandit staggered back, surprised by Lucian's skill, but pressed his advantage by slashing again, forcing Lucian to dodge backward. Helena moved forward, expanding her stance with the knight's eye in hand. "Your cause is lost," she called, voice unwavering. "The land rejects your corruption. Leave now or you will face more than weapons. By this relic, we stand under the protection of the elemental oaths." She tapped the gemstones box against her palm. A soft pulse of luminescence rippled across the clearing. The bandit's eyes widened, as if meeting some ancient judgment. Yet the bandit leader snarled. "Empty light. Power without will is meaningless." He rushed at Helena, two armed goons flanking Lucian and Tobias to keep them occupied. Helena raised the knight's eye in his direction. A sudden, resonant hum filled the hollow. The box pulsed brighter, and a gust of wind torn from corners of earth untouched swept through the clearing, snuffing out the brazier's flame and scattering embers into the night. The bandits staggered, shields of earth and wind buffeting them. Tobias and Lucian worked in tandem to subdue their assailants. Lucian's blade slashed in a swift arc, disarming one of the goons and sending his dagger skittering across the stones. Tobias stepped forward, delivering a decisive bolt into the gullet of the other. Both fell to the forest floor in a thud. Helena confronted the leader, who, recovering his balance, lunged with his staff. She pivoted to the side, the gemstone's glow flaring as she tapped the box against her wrist. A ripple of airflow slammed the bandit back a step, buffeting him like a wave. He roared, staggering to his knees, struggling to remain upright as if the very air resisted him. "Yield," Helena said, voice firm. "Your order has no right to soil these lands with blood." Panting, the leader struggled to lift his staff. "You will burn for this," he spat, but as he did, Lucian knocked him onto his back with a well-placed strike. Tobias and Father Aldrich advanced to bind his wrists with a length of hempen rope. Isla secured the final goon left standing, her dagger pressed firm against his throat. As the bandits lay bound, Lucian and Helena exhaled in unison. The knight's eyes glow dimmed, settling into a gentle pulse of calm light. Father Aldrich stepped forward, raising his lantern's silver flame in blessing. "By the oath you broke, by the blood you have shed, justice claims you." The bandit leader's lotus mask slipped from his face, revealing a scarred visage and haunted eyes. He snarled at Father Aldrich, then a ripple of fear washed his expression as the lantern's glow flickered over his battered form. By the time the group returned to Ashford Hollow, word of the skirmish had spread swiftly. Villagers lined the lane, whispering as they watched the captured bandits led through the manor gates. Lucian rode at their head, Helena by his side, and Father Aldrich circling the prisoners with slow, thoughtful steps. Tobias followed, accompanied by two crossbowmen who maintained tight grips on their loaded weapons, ensuring the bandits could not escape. Within the courtyard, the manor's guards formed a perimeter. Sir Alphon waited astride a black destrier, his silver armor glinting beneath the moon's pale light. He dismounted as the procession entered, nodding respectfully to Lucian. "I heard of your victory," he said quietly, voice tinged with relief. Your people will sleep easier now. Lucian inclined his head. We must remain ever watchful. These men were but a fraction of the threat we face. The Order's reach extends deeper than any of us imagined. Helena's gaze lingered on the two surviving bandits, now shackled and prostrate. Let them be turned over to the magistrate. Their order may still try to rescue them, or worse, mount another assault. Father Aldrich laid a comforting hand on Helena's arm. Tonight, we have defended not only our lives but our land's very spirit. In doing so, you have proven that the Night's Eye's power, though potent, is no match for hearts bound by justice and unity. A bright gust of wind swept through the courtyard, rustling banners emblazoned with the grey crest and carrying with it the faintest echo of chanting voices, a promise that Ashford Hollow's legacy would endure, not through darkness, but through courage and compassion. As counselors and guards took the bandits into custody, Lucian and Helena ascended the main steps of the manor, the Night's Eye box still secure beneath Lucian's cloak. High above, a single raven circled the battlements before disappearing into the inky night sky, its cry echoing like a benediction across the newly peaceful fields. Within the great hall, Lucian lit a brazier to dispel the damp night chill. He and Helena stood before the hearth, gazing into the steady flames as embers danced toward the rafters. This victory has cost us much, Lucian said quietly, placing a reassuring hand on Helena's shoulder. But each challenge we face only strengthens our resolve to protect this land. Helena leaned into his touch, her eyes reflecting the firelight. We will guard Ashford Hollow with every breath. The Order's shadow may linger, but as long as we stand together vigilant and true, their darkness cannot prevail. Lucian nodded, his gaze drifting toward the sealed box in his cloak. We must remain watchful. But tonight, let us rest in the knowledge that our people walk under fewer shadows. Tomorrow, the Harvest Festival begins another step in rebuilding trust and forging the future we vowed to create. As the first notes of a lute drifted from the adjacent chamber, a welcome prelude to tomorrow's celebrations, Lucian ventured a small smile. The path ahead remained fraught with danger, but the people of Ashford Hollow had rallied behind their liege family when it mattered most. And in that unity, he found a true power that no ancient pact or elemental artifact could ever shatter. The first chill of autumn crept into Ashford Hollow, painting the orchard leaves in amber and gold. Each morning, Lucian Gray rose before dawn, riding storm along the perimeter of his lance to confirm that the fields remained untainted. Peace had prevailed since the skirmish at Saul Valley Abbey, but Lucian sensed a deeper fault line forming beneath the surface, one not born of overt violence, but of whispered discontent and shifting loyalties. That morning, as he returned to the manor, he saw Isla waiting at the stables. "My lord," she said, voice hushed, "I found this by the granary." She handed him a faded parchment, a crude sketch of the grey crest, overlaid by a lotus flower and shrouded in flames. Below, a single line read, "When the bond weakens, we claim what remains." Lucian's heart thudded. They left no signature, but the symbolism is clear: a splinter cell of the sable lotus seeks to provoke further upheaval. He folded the note, handing it to Isla. "Keep this to yourself for now. If word spreads, panic will follow." He mounted Storm and urged the gelding toward the manor gates, his mind already racing for a response. Inside the rebuilt Great Hall, Helena pored over trade ledgers with Father Aldrich. Tobias and Sir Alphonse stood at the hearth, their expressions grim. Lucian alighted from his horse, approaching the group. "We've received a message," he announced. "A new threat, a latent faction of the Order aims to destabilize us." Tobias tensed. "Should we mobilize the militia again?" he asked, pressing fingers against the grain of the oak table. Helena shook her head. "We cannot simply respond with force. This is not a band of brigands, it is sedition, aimed at turning our own people against us." She exchanged a look with Father Aldrich. "We must root out their influence among the villagers first." Father Aldrich nodded. "I will travel to Greenhaven Cottage and speak with the weavers there. They serve many in the hollow. A rumor woven into cloth or whispered at market could swiftly erode trust." He closed a weathered book of parish records. "It is said that discontent often festers in the idle hours between harvest and hearth. We must address it directly." Sir Alphonse crossed his arms. "I will patrol the northern watchtower tonight, in case they attempt to send signals or sabotage supplies. Tobias, gather overnight watchmen. I will remain on alert." Lucian turned to Helena. "What of the Night's Eye? Should we keep it sequestered?" He drew the small chest from beneath his cloak, revealing the smooth black surface of the gemstone's leaden box. Helena nodded gravely. "We move it deeper into the vault under the chapel. Only Father Aldrich and I will know its new location." She glanced at Isla. "Prepare the protective wards. This evening we perform an additional sealing rite." As the council dispersed to their tasks, Lucian lingered, gazing at the flicker of evening light dancing across the chamber's tapestries. A sense of vulnerability pressed upon him. Though the elemental bond had been severed, the Order's human malice remained a thread of fracture he had yet to mend. Long after midnight, Lucian and Helena slipped through the temple's corridors, accompanied by Isla and Father Aldrich. They carried the Night's Eye within a lead-bound chest, its surface etched with purification runes that Isla had painstakingly carved. The vaulted chamber beneath the chapel, once littered with shards of urns and the remnants of ancient rites, lay empty and still, a silent witness to the trials that had transpired there. Father Aldrich kneaded a small bowl of consecrated clay, reciting prayers in a low, rhythmic murmur. "Place the Night's Eye upon this dais," he instructed. Lucian did so, and Helena sprinkled the clay mixture around its edges. "By the seal of stone and sanctity, I bind this relic from mortal hands," Father Aldrich intoned. Isla traced the final glyph, a stylized lotus overshadowed by an oak leaf signifying the triumph of local roots over foreign intrusion. Soft breezes stirred the tapestry behind them, as though approving the binding. When the chanting ceased, the giants of stone fell silent once more. Lucian lifted the chest, placing it on a reinforced ledge behind a set of thick oak doors. No one can access the save by our combined will, he said, securing heavy bolts across the doors. Helena exhaled, relief shining in her eyes. Let us hope that in making the Night's Eye unreachable, we also dissuade the Order from further machinations. Father Aldrich laid a comforting hand on her shoulder. The power of an idea is separated from that of an object. They may still seek to undermine your rule through cunning, but the gemstone itself will no longer be their prize. With that, they retreated upstairs, locking the chapel's ancient door behind them. The vault closed, and silence reigned, yet the resolve beneath the hush felt stronger, more enduring than any temporal threat. The next morning, Lucian found himself addressing the villagers in the central square. A makeshift platform of hay bales had been erected by the smithy, and the town crier, Samuel Pike, rang his bell, summoning farmers, weavers, and craftsmen alike. Helena stood at Lucian's side, her presence a testament to unity. People of Ashford Hollow, Lucian proclaimed, voice carrying across the hush of the afternoon air, our land has endured tests of darkness and deceit. Yet because of you, your unwavering faith in justice and your willingness to stand as one, we have repelled threats both arcane and mortal. But a new shadow seeks to weaken our bonds by sowing discord. We ask you, remain steadfast. Do not let fear corrode our fellowship. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Tobias held aloft one of the black lotus symbols the bandits had worn, tartly displaying its gaudy embroidery. This emblem signifies a faction that values power over people, he said, voice firm. Let it not find root in your hearts. Report any suspicious gatherings, no matter how small, to the watchman at once. From the edge of the crowd, a stonecutter's daughter named Mabel Lowe spoke up, her breath quivering. I heard whispers at the weaver's hut last night that the Greys hoard secrets and that the Night's Eye is an object of terror, breathing misfortune upon those who come near. I thought it no more than gossip, but it unsettles houses. She met Lucian's gaze. Some believe returning the Night's Eye would restore balance. How shall we know if that is true? Lucian approached her, meeting her earnest eyes. Mabel, we have returned the Night's Eye to its rightful place, sealed so none may use it for harm. Its power can no longer touch the weaver's loom, nor poison the baker's oven. Rest assured, the land's balance now depends on you and I, on every honest hand and pure heart that tends these fields. It is not an object but our actions that shape our destiny. A hush fell once more, and then the villagers began to clap, a hesitant stir that swelled into enthusiastic applause. One by one, farmers raised their pitchforks aloft, carpenters hammered on their thighs in rhythm, and children danced between the crowd, twirling handkerchiefs in celebration of solidarity. Even as the Order's threats lingered like a distant storm, the communal spirit blazed brighter. That evening, Lucian walked the perimeter of the manor's southern orchard with Sir Alphon. The last vestiges of twilight slid into night, leaving only starlit sky and an occasional waxing crescent moon. Alphon sheathed his sword and leaned on the pommel. The villagers' loyalty is a powerful shield, he said. Yet I worry for those who serve the Order from within, secret sympathizers who might strike from behind. Lucian nodded. We will strengthen our watch, but trust must not be replaced by paranoia. Too many eyes will only breed suspicion. He sighed. We must discern friend from foe through deeds, not merely through symbols or rumors. Alphonse grunted in agreement. I ride out to the northern ridge at first light to meet Lord Calderon's patrol. The night air chills me to think of their mandate, watching for any sign of darkness. We must temper vigilance with caution. Lucien placed a hand on Alphonse's shoulder. May the dawn bring clarity, not confusion. He considered the stillness of the orchard, its rows of fruit-laden trees bending toward the ground. These orchards feed families. If we betray their trust, we betray all we have rebuilt. Alphonse's gaze drifted upward to the pale horizon. Tomorrow, we ride east. For now, may the night grant you rest, Lucien Gray. Lucien watched as Alphonse disappeared along the path. He lingered beneath an old pear tree, its branches heavy with fruit. As he reached to pluck a single pear, a faint breeze conveyed the softest whisper, balance must be guarded even when it seems secure. He shook his head, attributing the echo to fatigue, then turned back to the manor's glowing windows. Inside, Helena awaited him in the atrium, poised beside a crackling hearth. She looked up, relief and concern mingling in her gaze. Did you find Alphonse? I did, Lucien replied. He handed her the pear. Will you join me in sharing a meal? The hearth is bright and the table set. We need sustenance if we are to hold this hard-won peace. Helena smiled, accepting the fruit. You always know what I need. She led him to the table, where Isla and Father Aldrich had set out a simple supper, roasted pheasant, fresh bread, and honeyed apples from the orchard. Tobias arrived soon after, damp from evening dew yet his spirits high. As they ate, Lucien reflected on the fragile equilibrium they had achieved. The sable lotus's insurgent actions threatened to pry open new fissures, yet Ashford Hollow's unity was fortified by shared hardship, by the knowledge that vengeance could not triumph over compassion. During a lull in their meal, Father Aldrich offered a toast, to the bonds of hearth and home, to the courage that staves off darkness, and to the land that grants us life. May no chalice of fear ever stain our waters again. They raised goblets of spiced cider, clinking them together in a moment that felt both triumphant and tenuous. Outside, the wind carried an owl's distant call, a reminder that even the darkest creatures of night had their place in the cycle of life. As the company retired for the night, Lucien paused in the hallway, gazing at the tapestry depicting Myrolin's memorial beneath the pine. He pulled Helena close, resting his head gently against hers. Tomorrow we ride to Calderon's patrol at the ridge, he said, voice soft. We carry the hopes of many on our shoulders. But tonight, let us remember that we are not alone. Our people stand with us. Helena's hand found his, her fingers curling around his. Together, then, no matter what shadows loom. She guided him toward their chambers, where the glow of a single candle awaited. As Lucien extinguished the candle and slipped beneath the covers, he drifted to sleep with the distant rustle of wind in the orchard echoing in his ears, a lullaby of vigilance, and the promise that the dawn he sought would come, so long as they guarded their unity with unwavering hearts. Winter's breath arrived early, sweeping across Ashford Hollow with icy gusts that rattled shutters and dusted the ridges of the newly thawed orchards with a fragile veneer of snow. The harvest, bountiful though shortened by the sable lotus's bandit raids, had been stored in fortified granaries, and hearth fires roared in every cottage, their warmth a fragile bulwark against the cold. Yet beneath the surface of apparent comfort lay a tension that Lucian Gray could not shake, a sense that, despite the night's eye sealing and the bandits' defeat, a darker undercurrent still ran through the veins of the village. That morning, Lucian awakened to the muffled sound of hushed voices outside his chamber door. He wrapped a woolen cloak around his shoulders and stepped into the corridor, where Helena and Isla stood beside Tobias, whose forehead was creased with worry. "They speak of a cursed lull," Tobias said, voice low. "Sleep troubles many, and even Father Aldrich fears for the bodies found frozen on the orchard's edge." Their expressions were vacant, as though something stole their very souls. Helena's eyes narrowed. "Snow alone cannot claim life so swiftly. Nor could simple illness. We must investigate immediately." She glanced at Isla. "Take charge of the manor's remedies and ensure the infirmary is prepared." "I will accompany Lucian." Lucian nodded. "We ride at once." He saddled Storm and mounted, Helena climbing beside him on Ember, their horses' breath steaming in winter's chill. Tobias strapped his crossbow and heavy cloak, insisting on joining the search party, while Isla and Father Aldrich remained behind to tend to the sick and calm frightened families. Beyond the orchard, where the fruit trees bent beneath the weight of frost, lay a small clearing dotted with squat cottages. Entering, Lucian noticed that smoke curled from each chimney, yet doors lay ajar and heavy silence muted the sound of settling snow. Tobias moved ahead, stepping over footprints large and small in the dusting of fresh powder. "Look," Helena said, bending to examine pale ruts imprinted with uneasy tread. "Not all have fallen victim. Some footprints led away from the cottages, toward the ridge." Lucian frowned. Either the order sent a reconnaissance detail, or there is treachery closer to home. He followed the tracks toward the ridge, where a row of birch trees formed a narrow copse. There, the trail ended abruptly. Broken twigs and a single bloodied robe lay tangled among the underbrush. Tobias knelt, brushing snow aside. "These threads match the red iron weaver's dye. It cannot be mere coincidence. Someone from the cottage ranks betrayed his own, collaborating with the sable lotus." Helena's jaw tightened. "We must find who, and swiftly." She guided her horse onto a slight rise, scanning the misty morning. In the distance, beyond the frozen river that wound past the merchant's crossing, a lone figure moved, shrouded in a tattered cloak that flapped like mournful wings. The figure strode uphill, toward a clearing near the old mausoleum dedicated to Lord Alden's ancestors. Lucian motioned to Tobias and Helena. "There. Let us approach with caution. He may be their scout, or a hostage." Dismounting, Lucian and Tobias crept forward, crossbows at the ready, while Helena circled to flank the figure. As they closed in, the figure taller than most villagers, with shoulders broad beneath the cloak, halted and turned. Lucian's blood chilled. Beneath the hood, he recognized the face of Garrett Lowe, eldest son of Mabel Lowe, the weaver's daughter who had voiced her doubts at the town square. Garrett's eyes glowed with a tense fervor, his lips trembled with desperation. Lucian stepped into the pale light. Garrett, what is the meaning of this? Did you lead the Order's agents to our neighbors? Garrett's shoulders sagged. I had no choice. His voice wavered. They threatened my sister. They demanded I sow discord, to turn the villagers against you. I tried to resist, but they said they would burn our home and take my sister into the crypt's depths. Tobias lowered his crossbow, though his expression remained guarded. Why keep it from us? We might have protected her. Garrett shook his head, tears glistening on his lashes. They blackmailed me. They knew of my mother's debts and my sister's illness. They told me if I refused, both would perish by the season's end. His cloak slipped, revealing a dagger stained with frost-twinged crimson. I came to deliver this to Lord Grey, my blood on your doorstep, so that no one would suspect them. Helena dismounted and approached, her gloved hand resting on Garrett's trembling arm. You risked everything to save your family. We will not condemn you for desperation. She offered him a vial of clear liquid. Drink this, an antidote Father Aldrich prepared for those harmed by the Order's magic. It will purge the cold's curse from your veins. Garrett swallowed the vial's contents, his face slackening as warmth spread through him. Thank you, my lady, he whispered, voice hushed by gratitude. I am so sorry. Lucian exchanged a glance with Helena, the morning's violence replaced by compassion. Your atonement will not go unrewarded, he said. We will protect your family and set a watch over your mother's cottage. You have our trust. Back in the manor, the infirmary bustled with activity. Isla tended to neighbors stricken by the same icy affliction, rash symptoms, brittle skin, and hearts slowed by chill magic. Father Aldrich moved among them, offering prayers and chalking wards on doorposts. Helena and Lucian arrived, their cheeks flushed by the cold as they reported Garrett's confession. Father Aldrich closed his eyes gravely. The Order has attempted to weaponize winter's chill, binding spirits to the frost so that life ebbs from their victims. They seek to unmoor us from our community, to drive us to distrust one another until the hollow lies barren. Helena concealed a grimace as Lucian led Garrett's mother into the infirmary. The woman, her face drawn and gaunt, fell to her knees before Helena, seizing her hand in trembling prayer. My son would never betray the Grey name without cause, she said, tears slipping through her fingers. I am forever in your debt. Helena knelt beside her, offering gentle reassurance. Your son's sacrifice will be avenged, and your home will be protected. You need not kneel before your liege friend. Rise and be strong. Lucian and Tobias arranged for a patrol of guards and Red Iron Weavers Mabel's Guild to guard the cottage. Meanwhile, Isla concocted a warming salve of ginger and enchanted honey, applying it to Garrett's wounds where frost had bitten his skin. Slowly, color returned to his cheeks, and his gaze steadied. That evening, though the temperature hovered near freezing, the hearth fire in the great hall blazed. Villagers gathered under a canopy of banners embroidered with images of oak leaves and golden harvest grains. Helena stood before them, her presence both regal and nurturing. "My friends," she began, her voice carrying above the crackling fire, "we have faced a winter curse sown by those who would see Ashford Hollow undone. Thanks to the bravery of certain souls, Garrett Low chief among them, we have thwarted this attempt to divide us. Let us remember now the bonds of fellowship, stronger than any frost, warmer than any heart." A round of applause and cheers greeted her words, lifting the hall's mood. Small tables groaned under platters of roasted venison, hearty stews, and fresh breads, food from spite of the frost's timid fingers. Lucia Gray, the blacksmith's daughter, offered molten ale in tankards, its steam curling like a promise in the cold air. Children laughed as they chased one another in the dining hall's open space, weaving between chairs in a riot of holiday cheer. Lucian stood at Helena's side, watching the revelry. Tobias stood guard near the entrance, ever vigilant, yet there was a warmth in his eyes that matched the glow of the hearth. Isla moved among the villagers, offering doses of ginger tea to soothe chapped throats. Father Aldrich stood prayerfully near the chapel's threshold, gazing reverently at a sprig of mistletoe pinned above the door, a blessing of protection against any lingering malign influences. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors to the great hall rattled. A chill gust swept through, causing candles to gutter. Lucian's hand flew to his sword's hilt as he approached the door, Tobias at his shoulder. A cloaked figure stepped inside, revealing a young man with dark brows and worried eyes, Lucas Ashe, the miller's apprentice. He held in his hand another saffron-stained note, penned with scratchy urgency. Lucian took the parchment, breaking the seal. To Lucian Gray and Helena of Ashford Hollow. I have seen the lotus symbol carved upon the tree outside the mill. Beware tomorrow's dawn, they come in numbers greater than before, and icy winds follow their path. Only the heart of the old well's waters can staunch the chill that will come. A friend in shadows. Lucian's jaw clenched as he refolded the note. Another threat, this time they speak of the well. He turned to Helena, whose face had grown pale. They intend to resurrect the curse at the source, drawing upon the old water's power to freeze life itself. Helena's expression hardened with resolve. Then we go at first light. Gather the villagers near the well for protection and purification. We shall pour warmed spring water from the crypt's depths, blessed by Father Aldrich's chant, into the well to repel their magic. Tobias tightened his cloak. I will ready the militia. Let no one approach that well unbidden. Isla laid a gentle hand on Lucas's shoulder. Thank you for your warning, Lucas. Seek shelter among the villagers. They will keep you safe. Lucas offered a relieved nod, disappearing into the crowd of villagers, who had gathered to peer at the note. Murmurs rippled as the candlelight trembled across anxious faces. In that moment, the fragile joy of the feast wavered, replaced by a renewed sense of peril that stoked a fire of communal determination. Lucian held the note to the hearth's heat, burning its edges to ash. "No more blood need be spilled," he whispered, voice unwavering. "Tomorrow, we stand together, people, guardians, and the very land itself, to protect this home from those who would see it frozen in fear." Helena gripped his arm. "Our unity is our shield. Together, we shall defend the well, our base, and our hearts." As the revelers resumed their songs, voices raised in defiance of dread, Lucian and Helena shared a look of quiet strength. Though the night's shadows loomed with untold challenges, they had learned that Ashford Hollow's most potent magic lay not in ancient gemstones or forbidden pacts, but in the warmth of kindred. Spirits, bound by loyalty and courage even in the darkest of winters. Night's breath had fallen over Ashford Hollow long before the pale light of dawn crept across the horizon. Villagers filtered into the courtyard, their breath fogging in the chill air like wisps of worry. They carried lanterns, bowls of salted porridge, and bundles of pine boughs, each token intended as protection against the sable lotus's sinister designs. The frozen ground crunched beneath leather boots as Tobias Reed led a contingent of archers to positions flanking the old well, while Sir Alphon and two of his riders took post along the perimeter. Wall, crossbows loaded and ready. Helena Grey and Lucian Grey emerged onto the cobbled courtyard from the manor's high doors, their figures cloaked against the cold. Helena wore a heavy woolen mantle trimmed with fur, but her posture remained regal. Lucian's own cloak was cinched at the throat, but his hands were bare, a silent vow that he would not flinch in the face of the Order's magic. Behind them, Ilo moved among the villagers, distributing small flasks of warming elixir made from ginger root and honey, and Father Aldrich recited brief prayers at each doorway, scrawling wards in chalk to protect those shelters. "Stay close," Lucian instructed Tobias as he passed. "No one approaches the well without my signal." Tobias nodded, his expression grim. The young archers formed a half-circle, their arrows tipped with fire resin, each bolt capable of igniting on impact, meant to disrupt any magical frost the Order might unleash. Helena approached Father Aldrich by a wooden table set near the well. The table held small bowls of consecrated salt, a vial of spring water drawn from deep within the crypt, and slender candles made of beeswax. Father Aldrich's staff, topped with a silver lotus emblem, glinted dully in the dawn light. "We begin at first light," she said quietly. "Every villager within sight of the well must stand with purpose. If the Order's storm seeks to freeze our hearts, we will answer with warmth and resolve." Father Aldrich inclined his head, his eyes reflecting both reverence and sorrow. "Let us pray the spirits of Myra and Lindra guide our hands." He touched the vial of spring water and whispered a soft invocation. The glass trembled faintly, and a shimmer danced along the liquid surface. At Lucian's signal, a sharp, low whistle, the villagers drew closer, forming a ring around the well, its moss-choked stones visible beneath the thin crust of ice. Mabel Lowe stood at the front, clutching a length of red wool thread, the symbol of the Red Iron Weavers' solidarity. On either side of her, Lucas Ashe and Emery's Holcomb lent support, their faces still pale from their recent ordeals but shining with renewed courage. Sir Alphon rode to the edge of the gathering, raising his hand for silence. People of Ashford Hollow, know that we face those who would break our unity by weaponizing winter's chill. Today, at sunrise, we defend not only the well but every hearth and hearthstone in this hollow. Stand firm, and let no shadow cross your resolve. A murmur of assent rippled through the crowd. Helena placed her hand atop Lucas's shoulder. "Stay close, Lucas," she said. "Should our defenses falter, you must retreat behind the lines and summon reinforcements." Lucas swallowed, nodding firmly. As the first slender rays of sunlight pierced the eastern sky, Father Aldrich raised his staff and began chanting in the ancient tongue. "Oris frigidus, venite hoc. Elementa ignis, defendite nostrum lociem." A low hum reverberated through the air, carrying on that single sound a plea for fire, wind, water, and earth to coalesce in defense of the well. One by one, villagers dipped bowls of consecrated salt into the vial of spring water, turning the mixture to brine. Then, at Father Aldrich's command, they raised their bowls high and poured them around the well's lip, their voices rising in a choral benediction. "By salt and water, by heat and earth, we seal this well from curse's birth. With unity's flame, cold shall not stay. Blessed be hearts who hold the day." As the last drops of salt water splashed onto the icy surface, a burst of warmth seemed to radiate from the well's center, causing the thin ice to hiss and crack in protest. The villagers stepped back, eyes widening as faint steam rose in pale tendrils. The air itself tasted of brine and sunlit promise of fleeting reassurance before the storm they had all braced to face. At that moment, a distant howl split the air, a sound both animal and unnatural, as though the wind itself carried lamentation. Tobias raised his crossbow, pacing to the edge of the archers. A cloud of swirling grey mist coalesced beyond the orchard's edge, moving in unnatural patterns like a swirl of smoke spelling an unseen command. Lucian's breath caught as a sudden chill descended, brushing through the courtyard like a blade. His cloak billowed, and he felt a shiver dart down his spine, an echo of the crypt's residual magic, yet amplified by malice. Below the mist, figures emerged cloaked in lotus-stained robes, their hoods drawn low. Their procession advanced on the well, each step seeming to draw the autumn's life into their frozen wake. At their head strode a tall woman whose mask bore a stylized lotus ablaze in silver, her voice raised in a chant that turned the dawn's promise into a dirge. By petals black and winter's breath, we stir the frost of silent death. The well's heart yields in frozen song. Your warmth undone, your hope goes wrong. The air rippled as her words took shape, frost spiraled outward, encasing tree branches and lanterns in crystalline lattices. A wave of absolute cold washed over the villagers, tearing at cloaks, frosting eyelashes, and stinging exposed skin. Tobias led the archers in, loosing bolts into the oncoming figures, each arrow catching blaze upon impact and hissing in steamy sizzles. Several bandits fell back, their robes aflame, but the woman's chant continued undeterred. Lucian signaled Helena, and both drew their swords as icy gusts lashed at them. Alphon rode forth, his lance tipped with a small iron bell that rang with every strike, sending a resonance aimed at disrupting the frost's pattern. Still, the Lotus envoy advanced, raising a staff carved to resemble entwined vines of black petals. From its tip, shards of crystalline ice shot forth, shattering into freezing shards that speared the ground like jagged teeth. Father Aldrich raised his staff, chanting anew, Flamma Purgens, Frigus dissolve fire that cleanses, dissolve the chill. A column of flame erupted from the brazier he held, piercing the frost-thickened air. Yet even the fire's hiss seemed drowned in the Lotus woman's chanting, as though each syllable drew strength from the desperation weaving through the stones. Helena moved with fluid grace, her sword flashing in arcs of steel aimed to intercept the frost shards. Lucian, to my side, she called, muscles taut as she deflected a shard that vaporized into steam upon contact with her blade. Lucian met her, his sword crackling with residual warmth from the consecrated salt he had touched before the battle. They formed a protective circle around the well's lip. Tobias called to the archers, aim for her staff, shatter the source. They pressed their bolts into the oncoming storm, the fire-tipped arrows carving paths of flame through sheets of frost. One bolt struck the staff's metal rings, causing a high-pitched screech as ice cracked and fell in splintered shards. The Lotus woman stumbled, her chant faltering. With renewed vigor, Father Aldrich thrust his staff forward, sending a surge of warmth that seared the frost's tendrils across the courtyard. The chill receded in ripples, though the air remained frigid. The Lotus woman staggered back, the glow in her mask flickering as though her life force wavered. Sir Alphon charged, lance lowered. The Lotus woman thrust her staff upward, summoning a shield of frost that exploded in crystalline shards beneath Alphon's mount. The destrier reared, flinging Alphon clear but leaving both rider and horse dazed in the swirling snow. Lucian raced to his side, parrying a final remnant of frost sent by the Lotus woman clutching her damaged staff. Hold her! Lucian shouted. Tobias lunged through the scattering frost to grasp her robes, and Isla sprinted to Alphon's aid. Helpless, the Lotus woman attempted to conjure another wave of cold, but Father Aldrich and Helena closed in. Helena's blade met the staff with a thunderous clash that yielded a crack like breaking ice. Shards flew outward, shimmering like diamonds before melting into fog. With a final incantation, Father Aldrich thrust the tip of his staff into the frozen earth. A vicious tremor shook the courtyard, and the Lotus woman's mask shattered, revealing a face twisted by desperation and regret. Gasps rippled through the defenders as the realization of her mortality broke the spell she wielded. As the mask fell, the Lotus woman, her true name unknown, crumpled to her knees, bewitched no longer. Tobias bound her wrists with iron shackles that bore runes of binding, and Alphon knelt to examine the staff's broken pieces. The Order's power here is fragmented, Alphon observed, picking a shard of frost that crumbled into mist at his touch. They have no master here, just zealots clinging to ritual. Helena stood beside Lucian, gaze steady. We have defended the well, she proclaimed, voice echoing across the courtyard. But this victory brings no glory, only the knowledge that the Order's shadow yet lingers. Father Aldrich raised his staff, the silver lotus at its tip gleaming. By this binding, and by the unity of those who stand here, let the curse of winter's wrath be banished from these lands. Let Ashford Hollow's hearths burn bright against all who seek to freeze our hearts. As he spoke the final words, a wave of gentle warmth radiated outward. The frigid air that had clawed at their skins receded, the ice that crusted the well's lip melted in rivulets, exposing the old stone to Father Aldrich's offering of warmed spring water. The fire-tipped arrows had carved charred patterns into the ground, but now the frost's final grasp dissipated, leaving only damp earth and the scent of thawed winter. The villagers exhaled in unison, some falling to their knees in gratitude, others brushing tears from reddened cheeks. Even Sir Alphon, who rarely displayed emotion, exhaled in relief as he supported his horse. Tobias exulted with a bellowing shout, ruffling the young archers' hair as they descended from their posts. Isla tended to Alphon's sprained ankle, muttering prayers to keep the frost's last whispers from seeping into his bones. Lucian and Helena exchanged a glance laden with both exhaustion and determination. "We have defended what was ours," Lucian said softly. "But these shards of scorched frost, symbols of strife, remind us that vigilance must never wane." Helena nodded, offering him a worn cloth to wipe the soot from his cheek. "The well stands cleansed once more. Let us rejoice, and yet remember that the Order's fractured heart will beat again. As long as any seek to sow discord, our unity must shine like a beacon." That night, beneath a starlit sky, the manor's courtyard became a place of renewed celebration. Fires burned in braziers set to keep the cold at bay, and villagers huddled around tables laden with steaming stew, fresh bread, and sweet-spiced wine, tokens of warmth against winter's final assaults. Mabel Lowe and the Red Iron Weavers had fashioned a tapestry depicting the well encircled by voices joined in song, a testament to resilience. Lucian and Helena moved among the gathering, sharing bread with frost-bitten hands and extending embraces to those who had defended hearth and home. Tobias, emboldened by victory, regaled children with tales of valor, his booming voice scaring away the last tremors of fear, leaving only laughter in its stead. Isla distributed salves to those still nursing chills, her gentle words a balm to both body and spirit. Father Aldrich drifted among the villagers, blessing each in turn, murmuring that faith and unity were the most potent spells of all. As laughter and music wove through the night air, fiddles dancing alongside tambourines, Lucian ascended a small dais near the hearth. The crackle of wood and the combined warmth of so many bodies enveloped him like a cloak. With Helena by his side, he raised a silver goblet filled with honeyed ale from the orchard. "To Ashford Hollow," he declared, voice ringing with conviction. "To those who stood unwavering against the frost's bite. May this well remain a source of life, not of curse. May our bonds, forged in adversity, remain unbroken as the oaks themselves. And may any who come against our unity find only the strength of a people who stand as one." The courtyard erupted in cheers, the clatter of cups and the rhythm of palms meeting in applause. Lanterns swayed in a gentle breeze that heralded both an end to the winter's fury and the promise of spring's renewal, an unspoken vow that as long as Ashford Hollow's people held true, no storm, magic, or shadow could dim their shared light. Under the swirling embers of the hearth fire, Lucian and Helena shared a quiet moment. Though the moon's pale glow cast their faces in silver, their expressions shone with warmth that no frost could touch. Tonight, we have triumphed, Helena whispered. But I sense a longing in the well, still stones, a hunger for next spring's bloom. Lucian placed a hand upon her cheek, his thumb brushing away a smudge of ash. Then we shall quench that longing with the promise of our deeds, honest labor, compassion, and unyielding unity. The order's shards may remain, but together, we will forge them into a mosaic of hope. The first light of spring came slowly to Ashford Hollow, its gold rays filtering through the pale green of budding leaves and melting the last vestiges of winter's frost. After the ordeal at the well, where the sable lotus's agents had sought to shatter the community with a final surge of frost magic, peace settled over the hidden valley like a soft blanket. The once bleak orchards now glowed with apricot blossoms, and the orchard's air was fragrant with promise rather than dread. On this morning, Lucian Gray awoke before the sun fully rose, stepping out onto his wide balcony to breathe in the gentle warmth. Storm, his faithful dappled gelding, pawed quietly at his feet. Nearby, Helena emerged on Ember, her chestnut mare, her dark hair bound with a simple garland of wild flowers. As Lucian dismounted, she smiled soft, steadfast, triumphant. I dreamt last night of Myrolin's spirit dancing among these blossoms, Helena said, voice hushed. She came to me in moonlit petals, her face serene, her gaze filled with hope. She blessed Ashford Hollow, and your name, Lucian Gray, was on her lips. Lucian touched the garland at Helena's waist, his heart conforming to hers. This dawn is the fruition of our vows, he replied. No longer do we stand under the weight of ancient curses or adversarial pacts. Today, the hollow awakens unburdened, its future ours to shape. Their shared glance lingered in the new light, a bond both personal and emblematic of the village's renewal. After a moment, they mounted and rode together down the winding path toward the manor's courtyard, where villagers had gathered to celebrate both spring's arrival and the hollow's hard-won deliverance. Within the courtyard, rows of trimmed hedges had been arranged to form a ceremonial pathway. Colorful pennants, stitched by the red iron weavers, fluttered overhead, depictions of oaks standing firm against swirling winds, hearts encircled by protective runes, and nods to the well now safeguarded by communal oaths. A platform of polished timber had been erected before the well itself. Upon it stood a simple oak lectern adorned with a single lily, a tribute to both Myrolin and Lindra Gray. Lucian and Helena rode upon the grove's pale cobbles to stand at the foot of the platform. Behind them, the manor's gates opened to admit Emery's Holcomb and Lucas Ashe, both now accompanied by family members, proof that even those once endangered by the order's machinations had found safety. Within the community, Tobias Reed lined the platform's base with a half-dozen guards, their crossbows lowered but ready at a moment's notice. As Lucian dismounted, villagers stepped back to form an open circle. Among them were Mabel Lowe and her mother, the weavers whose loyalties had been tested, Sir Alphon, mounted on a glistening black destrier, Isla, holding over her forearm a woven banner that depicted the very battle at Saul Valley Abbey, and Father Aldrich, his silver-thorn staff in hand, eyes closed in quiet prayer. Helena spoke first, her voice ringing clear. Friends, neighbors, we have gathered in this place, once the nexus of curse and conspiracy, to honor all who have sacrificed for our land's renewal. Today, we commit to a new covenant, one of unity, compassion, and vigilance, so that no order, no darkness, shall ever again claim our home." She gestured to the well, its smooth lip now inlaid with bright shards of quartz at the rim, an embellishment added by the red iron weavers to reflect sunlight and ward off lingering shadows. "This well has known betrayal and enchantment, it drank too deeply of fear and false promises. But now it stands cleansed, blessing the earth with water that flows untainted. Each of us, young and old, has a part to play in its safeguarding." Isla stepped forward, offering a scroll bound with red ribbon. "We, the people of Ashford Hollow, pledge this day to stand by one another through warmth and cold, in laughter and tears. We swear to repurpose this well as the heart of our collective hope, to share its bounty, and to defend its purity." Mabel Lowe and her mother held the scroll aloft. Mabel then traced her fingers across the names inked upon it: farmers, weavers, blacksmiths, nurses, and magistrates. At last, Lucian took the scroll, repositioning it on the lectern. In careful, deliberate strokes, he inscribed his own signature with a carved quill dipped in crimson dye, symbolic of the blood his ancestors had shed and the vow he renewed to prevent any further stain upon his family's name. "As lord of these lands, I affix my seal," Lucian declared, pressing his signet ring atop the final flourish, its design a stylized oak enveloped in a circle of protective runes. "By this act, let no spirit nor mortal deceive us again." A hush fell over the crowd as a gentle breeze, the first true breeze of spring, wafted through the courtyard. Father Aldrich raised his staff, and a faint silver glow emanated from the lotus emblem. He intoned quietly, "Terra redimida, animi pacificati," land redeemed, souls pacified. The well's waters responded with a soft chime, as though the earth itself had acknowledged the prayer. At the same moment, the quartz shards around the rim glinted, flighting silver arcs of light across the faces of every villager. A moment of pure, radiant hope, shared, held, and anchored by the well's deep echo. With ceremonial oaths concluded, the villagers converged on tables laden with spring's first fruits, steaming bowls of wild nettle soup, baskets of leek and cheese tarts, platters of honey glazed pheasant, and a host of loaves made from wheat saved from winter's store. Drums, flutes, and fiddles sounded a lively refrain as children spun around an open patch of ground, weaving ribbons around a maypole adorned with ribbons of white, green, and gold. Lucian moved among them, sharing bread with the wheat farmers whose land once lay fallow, offering cups of warming cider to the blacksmith apprentices whose early nights had been spent reinforcing the manor's gates. Helena joined Mabel at a table of weavers, praising the intricate patterns woven into the new banners, these very fabrics to become the new standard for Ashford Hollow's garb, replacing logos and symbols of subservience with those of solidarity. As the midday sun climbed higher, Lucian found Tobias beneath the old pear tree where he had first heard the well's echo. Tobias was deep in conversation with the freed bandit who had once been the Lotus Woman's lieutenant, now known as Marina Ashwood, her lotus mask held broken in her hands like a discarded shackle. Lucas Ashe and Emery's Holcomb listened with rapt attention, absorbing her words. Marina, once a devoted acolyte of the order, now wore simple woolen garb woven by the red iron weavers. "I betrayed you all with ignorance and fear," she told them, her voice steady though her eyes glistened with remorse. but once I escaped their influence, once their winter's curse chilled my heart, I saw the truth, only unity can protect us. I will spend my life repaying what I stole, by teaching others the order's curses, so they may resist. Tobias clapped her shoulder. Then your penance begins here. By sharing your knowledge, you help guard this hollow more than any blade can. Helena joined them, offering a nod of acceptance. Stand with us, Marina. Your knowledge shall be a shield rather than a weapon. As the four conversed, Father Aldrich arrived bearing a basket of spring daisies. He offered them to a circle of school children who held hands, encouraging them to weave the blossoms into garlands. Teach these children well, he said to the villagers around him. For where knowledge and compassion grow, darkness cannot take root. By afternoon, the feast reached its zenith. A scrim of white clouds drifted across the horizon as Lucian ascended a small platform beneath the ancient oak that had sheltered Alden Gray's ancestors. At his side, Helena held a book bound in oak bark, a new tome composed of events from the past seasons, accounts of Myrolin's spirit, the cleansing rites, the winter's well, and the communities. Unified stand against the order. Called the Chronicle of Ashford Hollow, it was to be housed within the manor's restored library, its pages accessible to all who sought to learn and to remember. Lucian placed his hand upon its leather binding. Let this chronicle be a living testament of our trials and triumphs. May future generations read these pages, not to dwell in fear, but to carry forward the lessons of hope, unity, and vigilance. Clapping thundered across the courtyard, and as villagers raised their cups in salute, a herald stepped forward, Sir Alphon in full plate, sun glinting off his armor. He raised his lance high, the banner of Ashford Hollow cresting above him, a golden heart encircled by oak leaves. By sword and shield, by hammer and loom, by prayer and hearth, he proclaimed, this hollow stands as one. That proclamation, simple, yet profound, echoed through every soul present. As the final resonances died in the crisp air, the musicians took up their instruments, a slow, rolling drum beat that signaled the beginning of spring's festival, followed by lilting flutes and the tune of fiddles carried on the breeze. Helena turned to Lucian, their hands entwined. We have fulfilled our journey, she murmured. Our home is free of curse, but our duties never truly end. We must continue to guard this land, to remind all who pass that true power lies not in ancient pacts nor forbidden relics, but in the hearts and hands of those who stand together. Lucian's gaze stretched across the courtyard, children dancing, villagers embracing, freed bandits serving wine to grateful families. This is the true inheritance of Ashford Hollow, he said. May this dawn never fade. As they stood beneath the old oak, whose roots delved deep into soil once tainted with darkness, Lucian and Helena shared a resolute quiet, reflecting the spirit of resilience that now defined their home. And as the banner rippled above, and the first petals of daisies drifted from the children's garlands, Ashford Hollow commemorated not just an ending, but a beginning, an everlasting dawn born of unity, sacrifice, and love that no storm of winter's wrath could ever extinguish. Chapter 1, A Marriage Bound by Debt. Description: Lady Helena Grey arranges the marriage of her reckless son, Lucian, to the impoverished village girl, Myra Lynn, in order to settle crippling debts. Myra, unaware of her role as a bargaining chip, arrives at Ashford Hollow's manor and learns that her new husband regards her with indifference. As Helena's cold plan unfolds, Myra is led to the hidden well beneath the servants' corridor and cast into its depths, setting the stage for a spirit's restless vengeance. Chapter 2, Whispers on the Wind. Description: after Myra's disappearance, rumors swirl of her lingering ghost. Lucian returns home haunted by guilt and encounters Myra's spirit at the well, revealing an ancient connection to Lindra Grey, an ancestor who similarly drowned. Helena discovers Lord Alden's hidden journal detailing forbidden pacts, and the villagers find Myra's body in a desecrated grave. In a makeshift crypt ceremony, Lindra and Myra's spirits are finally laid to rest, but new knowledge of Alden's dark bargains hints at deeper evils. Chapter 3, Echoes in the Hollow. Description: Lucian and Helena uncover Alden's ledger, revealing shipments of alchemical reagents and summoning rituals tied to the crypt beneath the chapel. Guided by Father Aldrich, they locate the hidden vault where Alden kept the Night's Eye gemstone. Reading Alden's confession, they learn he sacrificed innocence in exchange for power. In a public gathering, villagers recount generations of suffering at the Greys' hands, and Lucian publicly atones, renouncing his family's dark legacy and scattering the cursed gold to demonstrate true remorse. Chapter 4, Beneath the Mask of Legacy. Description: determined to end Alden's pact once and for all, Lucian, Helena, and Father Aldrich perform a ritual to cleanse the crypt's imprisoned souls. They shatter the obsidian box containing Alden's confession, releasing trapped spirits. Then, in the chapel, a cleansing rite frees Myra and Lindra's souls, which ascend in a radiant glow. With the Night's Eye sealed and the final vestiges of Alden's curse broken, the villagers begin rebuilding, hopeful yet mindful of lingering consequences. Chapter 5, Scars of the Past. Description: though fields and livestock recover, Lucian discovers tainted soil and dead animals, remnants of Alden's broader pact with elemental ley lines. Guided by Father Aldrich, they descend into a secret crypt beneath the manor's wine cellar, where jars containing sacrificed villagers' remains feed the land's poison. Through a rite of washing, villagers confess ancestral wrongs, and the jars shatter. The crypt trembles as elemental bonds break, cleansing the land. The villagers celebrate a harvest festival, pledging to honor unity and prevent future darkness. Chapter 6, Storm Clouds on a Clear Horizon. Description: news arrives that Drake Moore's Order of the Sable Lotus demands the Night's Eye's return. Lucian, Helena, and allied knights negotiate at the Bridge of Fallen Leaves, returning the gemstone in exchange for the Order's oath. Meanwhile, they fortify the manor and cultivate alliances with neighboring townships. In a nighttime sealing ritual, they hide and protect the Night's Eye within a lead-lined vault under the chapel, ensuring that it can no longer threaten the Hollow's peace. Chapter 7, Shadows Behind the Veil. Description: rumors of bandit attacks bearing lotus symbols arise. Lucian and Helena investigate a ravaged peddler's cart, discovering that Sable Lotus zealots continue to sow fear. Sir Alphon and Tobias organize patrols while Father Aldrich and Helena travel the Old Oran Road, confronting the bandits at the ruins of Sol Valley Abbey. A fierce battle ensues. Helena's invocation and Father Aldrich's fireward shatter the bandits' frost magic. They capture a Lotus agent, reaffirming the villagers' unity as the Order's shattered forces recoil. Chapter 8, Embers of a Broken Peace. Description: Gareth Lowe, blackmailed by the Sable Lotus to sow discord among villagers, confesses under siege and reveals his coerced betrayal. The Order has resurrected Winter's curse to freeze villagers' hearts. Helena and Lucian rush to intercept Lotus envoys at the old mausoleum, where a battle of elemental magic erupts. Bolts of enchanted flame and steel clash with shards of frost. Father Aldrich's blessing and collective determination break the Lotus woman's mask, binding her in iron. The winter's curse dissipates, and villagers celebrate in a spring festival. Chapter 9, The Unseen Fracture. Description: Early spring brings whispers of treachery within the village. Gareth Lowe's coerced betrayal is revealed. The Order threatened his sister to force him into spiteful acts. Helena and Lucian heal Gareth's wounds and vow to protect his family. They discover that Lotus zealots have stenciled flaming Lotus symbols across the mill. A communal council reinforces unity and vigilance as Father Aldrich fortifies wards around each home. That night, a ritual to seal the night's eye in its vault is performed, ensuring its power cannot be misused. Chapter 10, The Well of Winter's Wrath. Description: A clandestine Lotus faction strikes again, seeking to corrupt the source of Ashford Hollow's life, the old well, by infusing it with elemental frost. Villagers gather around the well to purify it with consecrated salt and warmed spring water. As frost-bearing Lotus envoys advance under a chant that freezes all in its path, crossbowmen and knights fight back. Father Aldrich's fire invocation and Helena's unwavering sword deflect shards of ice. The Lotus envoy's staff shatters, and with a binding prayer, Father Aldrich dispels the winter's curse. Harvest celebrations resume as the well stands cleansed. Chapter 11, Embers of Unity. Description: With winter's last hold broken, Ashford Hollow transitions into early spring. The villagers reconstruct the well's rim with quartz, and Helena confirms the village's covenant of unity. Freed Lotus agents, such as Marina Ashwood, share forbidden knowledge to help the Hollow remain vigilant. Father Aldrich leads prayers in the chapel, and the children place daisies under the doorway's mistletoe charm. In a grand ceremony, Lucian and Helena unveil the Chronicle of Ashford Hollow, documenting every trial, every sacrifice, and every reaffirmed vow, ensuring future generations remember lessons of solidarity. Chapter 12, Dawn of a New Dawn. Description: On the cusp of true spring, Lucian and Helena preside over the final covenant, the oath of the well, binding every villager to protect the water source, share its bounty, and honor the memory of those lost. A festive celebration follows, with merriment beneath oak canopies, children weaving blossoms around a maypole, and the first wild strawberries of the season. As the chronicle is placed in the library and a new banner borne aloft, Ashford Hollow's people stand united, free of curses, guided by compassion, and confident that their shared future will blossom more brightly than any past darkness.